camp up in Labrador.
No way. Like,
990.
Like 2 nights ago.
what, $1 million?
I'm sitting in the woods. I'm sitting in the woods phone with you. The phone just keeps vibrating.
It's 6:30 here.
It's 6:29.
No, it is. It's 6:29.
6:29.
But that's okay, we'll get
For
started.
7 years we've gone with that clock that's wrong.
There you go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the October 21st regular business meeting of Turnerville County Council and Election Day, so we'll find out throughout the night where we actually sit federally. So far, sad to say, Newfoundland turned red. Oh. Okay. I have no leg to stand on that.
It's over up there.
It is. So, moving on. Adoption of agenda. 2.1, do we have any additions? We're gonna move. No, it's in there. Okay, good. Excellent. Can I get a motion to adopt? Deputy Mayor Holiday, motion to adopt. All in favor? Excellent, thank you. Adoption of previous minutes from October 7th, regular business meeting. Anyone? Aha, $5.
I knew it, yeah.
That's pizza, did we
That's
say?
pretty good,
Pizza,
yeah. Mr. Rapp,
What's that?
how's our minutes looking?
I think they're pretty good. I could actually make a motion to approve them.
That would be great. Motion on the table from Councillor Rapp. Any comments, questions, concerns? None? All in favor? Excellent, thank you. Question period. At the beginning of every regular business meeting, we have a 15-minute question period for the public to come and ask questions of council and administration to clarify any concerns they may have. Have we received any questions this evening? None, thank you. Having none, we will move on as we have a hefty agenda. 5.1, statutory hearings, no items. Delegations, we do have delegations tonight. 6.1, Parks and Path Advisory Committee. Mr. Sharp, would you lead us away and introduce our guests?
Sure, thank you, Mayor Crane. Tonight we have the first of two delegations, the Parks and Pathways, or Pathways, Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. Mr. Joel Denham and Ms. Irene Waring are here to present the results of their open house and survey, as well as some recommendations for consideration for council.
There's another lady with them as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
There's ladies behind Joel.
Joel, Ms. Waring, Maddie, we actually have the mic working in the front now, so
I don't have to do anything with it.
no, because Joel knows how to operate all kinds of machinery, including a microphone.
So you're implying that I don't,
You know, I would never imply such a thing.
I think you all know who I am now because I've been a few times to present on Irene Waring, the chair. I've also got two committee members here with me tonight, which Mr. Sharp probably didn't know. Joel Denham is our secretary and Lady Teal Cotstein is our vice chair.
Okay.
Awesome.
So,
Welcome all.
thank you. As you said, you've got a hefty agenda. We'll get on with this as quickly as we can. We've done a PowerPoint, so perhaps if you need to ask questions on any particular slide, you could just do so.
Okay.
So just to start us off, I think you all know that we had an online survey and 2 open houses. We had over 200 participants take part in those. There was 105 did the online survey and the rest were at the open houses. So that particular feedback that we got is going to guide us on our pathways plan and on the recommendation for the proposed multi-use area. So we'll start with the next slide, and that's the proposed pathways priorities. Once we got the information from the public engagement, it was very clear that connectivity was super important to residents, that residents wanted to expand the pathways that we have at the moment, and they were also mostly interested in shale rather than actual paved pathways, which is a big saving right there. So with the information that we got, we ended up with 4 different things that we identified to guide us in the process that we're going to go through with the pathways priorities, and that was river access, connectivity, impact, and cost. So the next slide. Joel, if you want to take it from there.
So good evening, councillors. The existing pathways and proposed pathways were presented to our residents in the open houses. Just to let you know, the names that are on the slide are simply hypothetical names, stand-ins, simply from the point of view of, so that we didn't just have numbers, it was a little easier to refer to the actual name. And so the residents were asked to prioritize in terms of which ones they used. One of the things to note is that most of what residents indicated that they used or walked on regularly were either part of our plan or were things that we had sort of already kind of conceived of. So if you look at number 3, for example, on the slide, that's a pathway that runs down from Robert Street right past Gary's house, Councilor Rob's house, and down into Turner Gate area. So that's an area that's already a cut line, and I believe there used to be a utility line underneath there. So it's an area that is a natural. So a lot of those are things that people are already using. And as I say, at this point, these are proposed only and sort of hypothetical holding pattern names. We asked about residents in the importance of pathways and expanding the pathways, and quite frankly, we were quite surprised at the scope of the response. You can see from the bar graph, our residents want to walk. They want to be able to connect to different areas of the town. They want to be able to enjoy some level of nature experience while they're going around the town. A significant majority of participants indicated that they valued expansion and an effective pathway network, almost more than we had expected. So it was kind of interesting to see that.
Thank you. This is
Okay. This slide provides a breakdown of the prioritization or the ways in which we might be able to prioritize the various different pathways. You can see river access, connectivity, impact, and cost as the key criteria. Cost has been estimated by our town administration based on the type of pathway that residents preferred. So residents indicated a preference for a shale surface pathway for a variety of reasons. And actually that is a very sound and economical choice. I thought people actually had put their thinking caps on in recommending that because paved pathways not only cost more to install, but they cost more to maintain as time goes on. So you can see here that the one that was called River Rock Trail that runs along the berm in the sort of the Calkins Place area was a priority, along with the Turner Trail and the gas plant pathway. Those are ones that people indicated were high priorities, but as we look through these, we realized all of them have some value to somebody. And so we have not made a recommendation that says we should work on this trail or that trail first. We've said, look, all of them are important, and let's look at it from a sort of a cost and functionality viewpoint as time goes on. One of the things we also noted is that if town staff were able to complete some of the work to begin the process, we could see a 25 to 30% cost saving. But all of these pathways are reasonably affordable within a reasonable budget allocation on a year-by-year basis over time. They certainly don't all have to be done at once, although if you decided you were going to go ahead and do that and put them all in, I think you'd have a lot of happy residents, but you might find your budget looked a little different.
to say next. Great, thanks.
Just the-
Okay, thank you. So now we'll move on to the Arrowhead Park concept and maybe have something to say about that.
Okay, good evening. We proposed, or we have an area that was proposed, Arrowhead Park, that the town owns, 7 acres. And we had the questionnaire go out and the survey, and it brought back some interesting results as well. The overall resident feedback indicated significant interest in a phased-in multi-use recreational area. The river access was probably the most requested of all of them, and the day use area was, even though we have a few other day use areas, the day use area was requested, and an off-leash dog park area. They were probably the highest rated requested one. We are looking at a staged approach to this park, and of course adequate funding will be required. And PRAC is recommending that a staged approach could begin with access to parking and including provision for day use area and initial trails on the off-leash area. So people were really interested in volunteering, and this will help reduce cost and increase the level of ownership to these areas.
Okay, oops, thanks Joe, you're very good at that. Okay, so this slide just, again, it shows the resident support for the multi-use area, and again, it was in line with the pathways. People were very supportive of the idea. It was a clear message sent to us that there was interest in developing this, and talking to people at the open houses, and even when we've been out walking, one of the big selling points to people was the fact that the town owns the land. So you're not looking at buying a piece of land to put something on. So there was great interest in developing something there. So that slide just basically tells its own story. And the next slide, again, we've got the ranking of activities. This surprised us a little. We tried to make it clear to people that we had made some suggestions, but that's all that they were, was suggestions. And if people had other things that they thought might go in there, they were free to say what those were as well. We didn't get too many different opinions, but some of the rankings surprised us a little bit. River access was no surprise, because that's what people have been saying for a long time. And off-leash dog area, again, people have been asking for that. Day use, there was a lot of interest in having a day use area specifically with some kind of a group area, like a gazebo or something where people could meet and have parties, picnics, family reunions, whatever. Pump Park, there was interest in. There wasn't so much interest in the fitness park or the dog agility park, and the observation deck was sort of iffy in there. But we have those rankings, and so we have some really good information that we can start working on in terms of what the actual concept's going to look like. The next slide, it did have a few extra suggestions, but if you actually look at these things, skateboard park does not fit in there. Covered day use area, we basically had that anyway in the plans. Snowshoe trails, they will be the trails that you'll be walking on, and you could use them in the winter. So everything sort of ties in anyway. So there was nothing that people wanted particularly that we didn't already have in there. There were a few requests for playground equipment, but not, I think there was perhaps one or two for a full playground, and there was some that just said a couple of pieces of equipment. So it's still a little bit fluid, but we've got the basic concept of what people want, and we've got the numbers to back it up. Okay, so the next slide is the estimated costs. And I know you've all had a chance to look at this, so I'm not going to go over everything there. But what I will say is the same as Joel said earlier, that these costs don't include volunteer help. And so if we were to get volunteers helping, especially in terms of donating time or equipment, or even helping to build a gazebo, helping to do the pump park, those things could be done with considerably less money. But we're not looking to put this in immediately, we're looking to do this in a staged approach, And we're looking to initially get going by having the access and the parking, because then when people see it, then they'll start to realise there's already people walking in there. But once we've got those things in place, then I think people will start to become quite excited about it. Yeah.
I think one of the things to note about the Arrowhead concept is right now you have unmanaged access to that area. There's people in there all the time, walking dogs, looking for wildlife, enjoying but it's an area, including the river access, where there's a fair amount of debris along the river. There are some areas where there's old barbed wire that's kind of strewn about. So it's unmanaged and unimproved, but it is also on town property. So right now has potential for some liability. What we're suggesting is with some initial intervention to improve accessibility, we can get a better outcome. And the residents indicated they preferred the kind of natural environment that is there in the area, so we're not looking to create a Disney World in Turner Valley kind of scenario. One of the other pieces would be that without the parking and the access that we've recommended as being a first priority, you really gain nothing. So the parking and access is a critical piece to begin the project with. Estimating on the parking there is based on 26 stalls. I think that's the maximum number of stalls that could fit into the envisioned space. So it's possible you could actually reduce your number of parking stalls somewhat. And the estimate there is based on a gravel parking base at approximately, and I did the math, so I could be wrong, but it's works out to approximately $6,000 a stall, which in my experience is fairly average for a gravel parking stall. So it's an opportunity to enhance some accessibility in a parcel of land that actually currently is heavily used, but not really managed in any way.
Okay, so the next slide, I'm not going to read all of this out to you, obviously.
I'll go on.
But we generated a word cloud from one of the questions that was on the survey, and the question was, what do you like about the Arrowhead Park concept? And this is a really good way to let you see what people's reactions were, because things like river access and off-leash dogs, we love everything about it. The nature, all those words are jumping out, and this is all directly from responses from residents. So you can see that it's a concept that could get a lot of traction from people. Okay, so next slide. So basically, this is what we're asking for. These are our recommendations because we're an advisory committee. So the feedback from the public engagement showed that pathway connectivity and expansion is a priority. But as Joel said before, all of these pathways are identified as being important to some people. So what we're recommending, and I forgot to add some words in this next one, so I apologise, but what I should actually say is that what we're recommending is that council allow administration to continue to work with PRAC alongside with the committee to review the overall pathways plan. And when we've decided, based on this information, based on the criteria that we said, when we've come up with a very specific plan, we'll then bring it back to council, and we would ask you that you would adopt that as a guiding document, and then that will be there for the town to work on in future years, to put money away for pathways and to work towards completing in a staged approach, because we know realistically that we're not going to have the money to do any of these things straight away. And when we're working on it, we're keeping in mind the river access, the connectivity, the impact and the cost. And the second thing that we're asking is that you would recommend that council, that you consider requesting administration to begin the process of developing Arrowhead Park in a staged manner, and that you allow us to continue to work with administration on the concept of the park, so that we have a very concrete plan that we can give to you once those initial points of access and parking and some day use area and initial trails have been put in. So questions? Oh, the final slide, sorry. And that's just to sort of point out that what we're doing is very much in line with your strategic priorities.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Council. Councillor Hamilton.
Just take yours off.
Thanks so much for your presentation, and holding the open houses and compiling and gathering all this information. It was really appreciated. I had one quick question about access. Is there currently a gravel road that goes into where the proposed parking area is, or is that included in the parking area estimate?
So that gravel road is actually on private land.
Okay.
The actual access, as you're coming up to Kelta Road, there's the lands that were being reclaimed by ConocoPhillips, and then there's a grove of trees. So you can see, actually, administration has actually taken down one of the fences and cut down some of the grass in there. You can see there's a grass field that leads off into the park area. That's our land.
Okay.
Everything else around it in that section is either ConocoPhillips or private.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Mr. Wilkie, Councillor Wilkie.
I'm on the committee, so I've seen a lot of this information already, but I appreciate you guys bringing this, and thank you for all your work bringing it forward. I do just want to emphasize, you know, a lot of what we heard was that river access, which is a key part of our strategic plan, and you know, there are ways within here, and we're early days and these are rough numbers, right? But to make a meaningful impact, I think, on one of those strategic goals, and that was one of the things that jumped out at me immediately. So I appreciate you guys bringing it forward, and happy to answer any other questions that you have, but it was very positive. I shouldn't say exclusively positive. I mean, there's a wide range of opinions on everything, but in general, it was very supportive of increased investment in some recreational opportunities, but doing it in a staged manner, which I think fits with the mandate that we have on our tables.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Councillor Rapp, you good?
Yeah, no.
No?
I just need to get my numbers together. The parking area, it says 156,000, not sure, pardon me, that's your estimate, 156. Does that include the access off the DeKalb Trail? Or is that included?
Yes.
Yes.
Administration is nodding yes. Mr. Malenko is here
Craig
to answer
Williams,
any of those
so
questions.
that includes the access plus the parking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Gordon?
Perfect. Thank you so much for putting this together again and the work that's been done. Question I have regarding the shale pathway, and I understand the cost involved in the difference between going shale and asphalt pavement. What kind of issues would we have in the wintertime regarding ice buildup? And perhaps Craig Beaton can respond to that. Would there be concerns for the ice buildup, and what's the opportunities or challenges for removing that to maintain the pathway system throughout the winter season?
Go ahead, speak.
And yes, so a gravel trailway would probably remain unserviced during the winter months, so it would be a natural course. So snowshoeing and walking would all be through the snow. Otherwise, with snow removal equipment, we would just drag the gravels, the clay, shale off the surface, and we'd do more damage than good.
Much like Cochrane. Cochrane has a natural pathway, the same ties into the dark and so on.
That's correct.
Mr. Maloney?
Let me just add to that briefly. Yeah, I think when we initially started off with this, I think we were thinking, okay, we'll start off with, possibly a shale and gravel pathway system, then would advance over time as more and more users come onto a paved surface. But as it was alluded to in the PowerPoint presentation and in the survey results, it seemed to be a lot of the population preferred to stay with the shale, the more natural features. And while it has some drawbacks in the wintertime, that was sort of the focus of a lot of the individuals. I thought honestly it was going to go towards pavement. It was going to go. It looks like it's going towards shale surface, so it's pretty telling too. Maybe everybody's cost conscious. I don't know.
That's good. I personally have no preference. Shale's totally fine by me too. Councillor Holly.
Yeah, I'm just interested, if, like, looking at the top two, River Rock versus Turner Trail, the cost difference, on those, even though, like, if you just divide by how many meters, there seems to be a lot of variability, so I'm just wondering if that's because of the complexity, or of the two projects, or what's that?
So through the mayor, that's exactly it. Everyone is unique. No pathway is exactly the same, so it isn't a divide by so many meters and that works out. Every trail has something unique to it, whether it's grade, whether it's the state of the trail as it is. In the case of the gas plant trail, it's almost ready to go in a lot of cases, but we do have some additional costs as we end the trail on the south end to connect to the to Calta. So again, everyone has very unique features to it, and we broke it down fairly extensively to come over those costs. So yeah, please don't look at it as so many meters divided by cost. It doesn't work that way.
Okay, thank you. Continuing, Councillor Alden.
Yeah, if we can go to that picture of the Arrowhead Park, this is another question about that access, that's everyone, is it's showing where the gray pathway and the black pathway meet near Calta Road, is that where you're saying the road would have to come in? Or where, is this road not in the drawing at all?
Go ahead, Mr. Mahan.
So just to point to it there, so you can see the gray and the black pathways, those are suggested, but where the actual arrowhead is, where it comes out to the road, that's the actual existing access point that's been created by administration at this time.
Alright, so, alright.
So
So the
just
road's
on
not
text-
on the drawing?
So that would be the road.
At this point, it's the way it looks. Yeah, because the other lands there are actually ConocoPhillips, or you could put something down along the road allowance there as well. There are options in that regard, but right now the main access is along that straight arrow. Yeah, that's the way we've discussed it.
Perfect. Mr. Monica?
If I may provide some clarity, I don't have an extra laser pointer, but if you look up the Calta Road where the two gray sort of strips meet and they start off to Calta, then one veers off to the south. That is part of the proposed road system, road network into Arrowhead Park. We looked at the option of coming straight in off to Calta and dropping in, but there is a grade differential. And we have the road right of way, so that is within our lands. So we can put a driveway, if you will, next, right adjacent to the Calta, but at lower elevation, and share the approach that currently ConocoPhillips uses. One less approach is always safer, and while it's a little bit longer, it's also a better drop and better sightline at that location.
Councillor Rapp?
So in clarity then, you aren't putting a separate approach in, you're gonna use the one that currently exists, and then just come along the road ditch basically to bring into the point that comes out of the road. You'd use the current or the existing approach, not build a new one.
Through the mayor, based on the proposed concept, yes, we'd share an existing approach with ConocoPhillips. It's in our right of way, so we can do the shared setup.
Excellent. One more question? Here we go. Councillor Alden.
This is a bit of a subjective question. Was there any indication from residents which they were more excited about, more expanding the pathway system or the Arrowhead and the River Park? Just curious.
I don't think that's, did you get a feeling for that at all? Because I didn't. The people that we spoke to at the open houses were excited for both. And they're two completely different things, so I think it's hard to say you're going to take one over the other, right? I mean, I think with residents it's a given that they want more pathways and more connectivity, because if you look back at the master plan that was done in 2008 was it?
Sounds about right.
That was front and centre then, but then so was river access, and so both of those things are grabbing people's interest. So I think it will be very hard to say that one was preferable over the other. But I do think that with the Arrowhead Park, people were excited by the fact that it's a possible year-round use area as well, because you could snowshoe in the winter, you can still go down to the river. There's various different things that you could do in there in the winter as well as in the summer, and the fact that it was multi-use and multi-age group. So it wasn't just for one specific age, it was for the whole family.
No one else? Would the dog park be fenced? Or would it be open concept?
Some of those details we haven't completely gotten into, that's an ongoing discussion. And it will be an ongoing discussion, because if we do the initial startup, then they're the things that we look at next.
Excellent. Any further comments, questions, concerns? I think you guys are doing fantastic work, and I love how far we've come as Parks and Rec and working towards these initiatives of river access and pathways. And it seems every year it's just a little bit more, but it's all coming together, and I'm really, really happy to say that we have one of the best parks committees built, for sure. So thank you for all your time and dedication. With that, we're gonna take your recommendation, if you wanna read it again, because I think you wrote it down. Or do you have it in there?
There's two actually.
There's two? We've got them up here.
Yeah, you got it.
All right.
But I wanted to make sure that we added that part that we are working with administration.
Absolutely. Council, you have some recommendations in front of you.
Where are they?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
The second last slide.
It's
No,
the
I think
second
she's
to
more
last
specific.
slide, correct?
There's like 220 pages?
I can.
Yes, that'd be great. Councilor Hamilton? Sorry, go ahead.
So the first recommendation is regarding the pathways that council consider, well, I'll make the motion that council requested administration to work with PPRAC to review the overall plan with a view to phasing in expanding pathways, keeping in mind river access, overall pathway connectivity, impact, and cost. Is that the gist of it, to continue to work with administration?
Excellent. Thank you for that motion. Any further comments? Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you very much.
There's
Okay.
one more.
One more motion for it.
Sorry, guys.
I can give you this.
Yeah, give it. Go ahead.
Make the motion that, that council request administration begin the process of developing developing Arrowhead Park in a staged approach, beginning with access and parking, day use area, and initial trails.
Excellent, thank you. Comments? Councilor Rapp?
Yeah, I'm certainly in favor of that motion. That said, I wonder if we need to kind of find out about some of these trails and stuff. Like, I'm thinking about the one along the gas plant. Like, I mean, maybe we only have so much money per year. We could start doing the planning, but I'm not sure that you really wanna start the actual work until 2021 is what I'm thinking. It could, depending upon, you know, permission from from the government with respect to that gas plant area, because that's always been kind of a priority for all of us around here as well. Just something to think about, not to pour water on the idea.
I'll go with Councilor Wilkie for that.
Yeah, I think, and this is specific, this motion's specific to Arrowhead Park, but I think, you know, when I read it as developing Arrowhead Park in a stage, that's kind of, let's start building things, but I think it's developing the plan to phase in Arrowhead Park, right? So, happy to make a friendly amendment to that, just to say, make a motion that, council request administration, begin the process of planning Arrowhead Park in a staged approach, beginning with access and parking, day use area, and initial trails, if that works for it.
Works for me.
Working
Yeah.
with PrAC, yeah, so we'll say, requesting administration work with PrAC to begin the process of planning Arrowhead Park in a staged approach, beginning with access and parking, day use areas, and initial trails, if that works for everyone.
Okay, so do you wanna just that amendment for Heather?
Friendly amendment.
That's okay.
You got it? You got the gist of it?
Yeah, I've got that addition, so.
Alright, so we can go for it and go straight to.
Okay.
Perfect. Everyone's clear?
I'm good.
That's good.
Excellent. Okay, all in favor?
Well done,
Oh,
guys.
sorry, Cindy had it. No one voted. No one voted. Cindy.
No one.
I just, I'm a little concerned with that, so it's access and parking, absolutely, first step, has to happen. The day use area and the initial trails, the day use area is separate from the public river access area, right? Looking at the plan, the day use area is up in the flat field, the gazebos and the picnic tables and that stuff. Residents actually care more about the river access portion, what's happening along the bed, I would have thought. So I'm a little surprised that there would be a priority on the day use area over the public river access area.
There isn't.
Cause they're two different things, and we're saying day use area, we're not saying river access having priority. According to that, we're talking about the $75,000 day use area, not the $17,000 public river access.
Sorry, I think for the, and I'll let my fellow committee members follow up too, but I think, some of that river access would come with those initial trails. That was my understanding of how we would do things, is one of your first trails that you'd be cutting would be to get yourself down to the riverbank. And then, I mean, I don't think there's much necessary beyond that as a first step that gets people into the area and people able to get down to the river to be able to access it. And during most of the summer, it is fairly low water through there, and you'd be able to have reasonable access. And there is some drainage development, like there's small accesses down to the river already. So I think just getting that connectivity down there would be, in my view, the important first step. The day use area did come out of the survey as a priority, and that was viewed as up closer to the parking area. I mean, ultimately, you know, we're gonna have constrained resources and ability, and we'll have to make the decision on what goes first. But I think as a starting point, the day use area probably goes with the parking lot, and we can make a decision on to what extent that would involve. I don't know if the committee has anything that they think they'd like to add.
Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The reality is that we're still in the planning stages of this, so I think it's fair to say that that input is valuable. And it can give us some direction as to how to set up the usages without necessarily being tied into, you know, the absolute listing that's there. That being said, without access and parking, you've really got nothing, so we do have to do that no matter what. And then without some trail improvement, you have a liability issue, so we do need to work with those.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Holly?
Yeah, I guess I'm just asking for a friendly amendment to have river access specifically in that motion along with the day use area. I'd hate to have a gazebo and a kid not be able to walk down to the river. I know the plan is to have it, but if we're putting in the motion, just a friendly amendment to have river access in
I'm
that,
happy to
I'd
make
feel
that.
better.
Yeah.
I think you put in the cart before the horse, but never mind.
Happy to make that amendment to, say, day use area / river access, if that's all right,
Everyone's good? Councillor Rapp?
That brings me back to what I said before. I think there might be some other priorities to do in the meantime, and I think that when we do that, when we do open that road into it, we may have to spend $200,000 just to get the things that need to be done right then. So it might be wise to back that off a little bit and make sure we do some good planning along the way, which I know you guys will do.
That's our phased approach. That's good. Okay, any other comments? All in favor? Excellent, that's carried, thank you. And thank you guys.
Thank you.
You can go
Thank
home and watch the election
That's
if
exactly
you
where
like.
I'm going.
Or you can sit here. And we have another fantastic presentation coming up, so if you like, please don't run away. It's not happening. Okay, we need a small motion prior to the next one to extend the length of this presentation to 1 hour. So if I could get that, Deputy Mayor Holiday makes a motion to extend presentation time to 1 hour. All in favor? Excellent, thank you. Thank you again. Have a good evening. All right. Moving on, Foothills Regional Council presentation. So, Mr. Sharp, introduce our guest, please.
Thanks, Mayor Crane. While these two gentlemen are getting seated, we have two gentlemen with us today. The first is Chris Radford. He's the Director of Infrastructure and Operations for the town of Okotoks, and he's accompanying the gentleman by the name of Andre from GHD, who will be presenting the results of the Regional Solid Waste Strategy. Mr. Bradford has also been part of the roadshow along with Paul Lyons in briefing the Regional Councils on the results of the work that's gone in over the last several months. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to these two gentlemen. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you for coming this evening. We look forward to your presentation. So, by all means, the helm is yours. Just hit the little button. Yep, when it blinks, I lock you in. Perfect.
Thanks, Mr. Sharp. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Just a little background for Council on how we got here today. In 2018, the member municipalities in the Foothills region endorsed to have Okotoks lead a funding application for some opportunities to look at some regional efficiencies in solid waste management, focusing on different aspects, collection being one of them. Through that process, Okotoks, representing the member municipalities, was successful in garnering $165,000 to work towards this investigation and this review. From there, a technical advisory group was comprised, and we have representation from each member municipality. Mr. Beatty represents Turner Valley on that technical advisory group. Mr. Lyons, who isn't here tonight, who is actually in Nanton doing the same thing we're doing right now, concluding a lot of the updates to those councils. He was the chair of that technical advisory group, and he has been accompanying GHD on all of these presentations. So today, we're here to basically provide all of the findings through that regional investigation, and I'll turn it over to Mr. To Andre, and he will walk through this presentation and be happy to answer any questions, I believe, at the conclusion. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Arthur Joseph. I'm from GHD. It's a very tough act to follow after that interesting presentation about parks, and almost shows I don't live in Turner Valley. So this sounds like a really cool project. So I'll try to keep you guys engaged through this wonderful journey through solid waste management. So in terms of presentation overview, I'm just going to walk you through sort of the findings that we found over the last few months in terms of the current state, looking at the options analysis as well as recommendations and implementation plan, and also followed up by some discussions and questions from you folks. Next slide. So in terms of this study, when we look at solid waste management plans, we usually look at it from the lens of the solid waste management hierarchy, right? So this is where we look at rethink, reduce, reuse, recycle, and the more that we can actually focus on sort of those top lines of the pyramid, the fewer items actually go towards residuals. Residuals meaning that anything that doesn't get recycled or recovered ends up in the landfill, right, and entombed forever. Okay. So in terms of the current state, one more slide. Thank you. So what we looked at when we looked at all of the member municipalities, everyone has an average diversion rate of about 30 to 35% across all member municipalities. Some more than others, just based on the types of services that you offer. An integral part of sort of these solid waste management systems, essentially your depots. So we know that you essentially share one regional landfill, and are looking at ways to sort of collaborate more on that, as well as optimize other services within the region. So in terms of looking at the overall system, when we look at this chart here, it essentially breaks down the recycles management per municipality, right? So, you know, the green will be High River, their depot, also Nanton and everyone else. And essentially what we want to focus on is that gray areas. So in the entire region, what we look at is, you know, about 56% of the material collected ends up in your landfill, right? Based on what we've seen in the study, that is something that we can do better on as a region and also avoid. Okay. So the next slide as well also breaks it down by organic waste management. So this is becoming a lot more critical in terms of how you manage that black bag of garbage all across Canada. We know that organics in your landfill essentially promotes greenhouse gas and of course climate change. So at all times back here, no one really thinks about what they do with that banana peel and the ripple effects of it, but you know, of course we can manage that the same way that we manage recyclable material as well. So what we're seeing here is that out of all the waste collected in terms of organics, about 34% of that ends up into landfill in terms of looking at food as well as yard waste. Sorry. So we did a bit of a background check looking at your bylaws and policies. You know, these are sort of the operational details as to, you know, can we really bring the entire region onto regional systems? And from what we found, there were no restraints with regards to policies or bylaws that would prohibit this from happening. So that was actually good news. So no barriers were found in terms of regionalization. So the next slide, please. So when we examined the gross cost per household, we looked at all member municipalities in isolation. So the gray area meaning, you know, if you were looking at garbage, blue meaning recyclables, and green meaning organics. Okotoks is, you know, one of the only municipalities really collecting so separate organics. And very interestingly enough, Turner Valley and Black Diamond, I think, you know, the work that you guys are doing together is actually a shining example, because we were made aware that you are currently collaborating on a number of initiatives with regards to solid waste and especially in terms of collection. So that's why we sort of put both of you together, because, you know, you are the example of what we want to sort of accomplish across the entire region. So, you know, if you combine both together, you can get about $12 for garbage collection and about another $13 for recyclables.
May I? Is that correct? Because if we're paying $12 per month per residence, Black Diamond are paying $12 per month per residence, that's not, you're doubling that up, I believe.
Pardon?
The cost per residence is $12 per 2-month period.
Yeah.
Therefore, the actual cost per month, which is tabled, is $6 per month per residence.
Yeah, and that's something that said, looking at that further, my data cruncher is actually at the Nancy presentation. So from the policy point of view, but I can definitely look into that.
But you've added the two together instead of,
Yes.
if we're doing it together, it's the same
Yes.
cost per residence for all 2,000 whatever residents,
Yes.
rather than the 12.
Okay, I'll definitely look into that for you, Councillor Warren.
And the same with the recycle and the solid waste, you've doubled up.
Okay, and that's just based on the data that we received from both Black Diamond and Turner Valley. So if there's a misinterpretation, we will go revisit that model.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So then again, looking at sort of on this side here, the cost comparison between sort of what the cross collection cost versus the base rate. So looking at the blue bar, that is the essentially the gross system cost, and the black bar essentially what the each household pays. So combined. So looking at Black Diamond, what we see here is that it's that there's a cost of about $15 per household, and about $25 payroll system costs, and then with turnover value about $25 and about $20 per household.
So, quick question?
Yeah, sure.
Just go ahead.
This is in response to John's question. The numbers are right. So what we're billing residents isn't what it actually costs us. It costs us more to run our recycle. And that's the second slide. This last slide answers your question before. So the 12 and the 13 are correct, because it's $25 a month is what our actual gross system cost is. The $20 is what we're actually charging people. So I think it works out.
If you wanna just hit your mic, and then I can activate these guys.
Sorry, I just wanna follow up on that, cause when I look at our budget, right, we budget at roughly break even on both recycle and garbage, and we're doing that on the basis of $20 a month, per resident, right? It's $6 for recycle and $14 for garbage, so there's some kind of disconnect there between what costs are being represented here and what costs are represented in our budget material, because we do break even from a budget perspective, right? So there's something off there, cause when I think about it that way, we're charging $20 a month, we're breaking even in the budget, so $20 a month is what our system cost should be, right?
So we're not subsidising it from anywhere else, so I have a problem with those numbers.
Okay, go ahead, Susan.
Is there some administrative oversight, billing, that kind of stuff that you would have submitted as costs for it above the recycling, or is it just narrowing the numbers in?
Go ahead, Mr. Sharp.
So it's not a straightforward answer. We've been working with GHD on breaking out Turner Valley Black Diamond costs as we work through the gross and base rate. We passed on some corrections to GHT. Most were implemented, but we noticed at the 11th hour that a couple hadn't been. And so in the end, we're still working with them. I don't think that any of the discrepancies that you see here will affect the recommendations that GHD is going to bring forward, but following this evening, we're going to continue to work, and as we move forward with the staff recommendation as to whether to proceed or not in a regional partnership, we'll make sure that we've cleaned up the numbers and you have the most accurate. So if it's okay with council, I think it's best if we allow Andre to complete his presentation, and if you have any questions, we can circle back.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. And, just to address that point as well, when we looked at most of the system costs across the region, they're sort of lumped in, so it's a little bit difficult to do that forensic investigation to sort of pull things out, because when we got some of the costing, it was for the entire system. So, if we do have some discrepancies with the way that it's broken down internally, we like to actually address those and get some more feedback from administration. Thank you, Todd.
Perfect.
So when we looked at some of the observations, what we noticed is that in the region there's actually an excess truck capacity. So what that means is that you essentially have more trucks than you need to service the entire region, right? So everyone has their own fleet, But when we look at these planning studies, essentially what we look at is that trucks are made to run. So if your truck is sitting idle, then you're losing money. It's not essentially a well-used asset. When you look at the entire region, you do have enough trucks to more than adequately run a regional collection service. And also looking at the diversion rates across the entire region, your diversion rates significantly vary. So, between 70% and 68%. Okotoks being at 68, but when you look at that, it's a lot of, excuse me, action line waste coming in through the depots. So, don't walk it that they're so high and then everyone's so low. It's just the way that you count for the numbers. Okay, and one of the main things that we observe as well is that each municipality runs their own recycles depot and runs it very well. In terms of the way that the market is going right now, you do have a bigger, more powerful voice in numbers. So if we were to look at harmonizing exactly which materials are collected at all the depots, and these depots will play a very, very important role in go away, you can get much higher diversion rate across the entire region, because if you harmonize what's collected and how it's collected, then you can achieve much higher diversion rates. Okay, so coming to the options analysis. So in terms of the option analysis, what we looked at was collection, recyclables processing, and organics processing in the region. So in terms of the collection options, what we looked at were different combinations of, residuals only, looking at residuals and recycling, residuals and organics, or all three streams. And then on the next page, we also looked at what those various combinations would actually cost. So when we looked at different options, we saw if the region would go to garbage only, you'd be looking at about 50% in terms of that diversion. We looked at garbage and recycling, about 58. Garbage and organics, about 69, and if you have all three streams, about 75%, right, diversion. In terms of cost, that's the most important one that everyone's probably wondering about. The middle line there shows that if you were to have all three streams owned and operated by the region, you're looking at about, $14 for garbage, $24 for garbage and recycling, and about 23 for garbage and organics, and about 32 for all three, right? And that's just based on using assets that you already own, as well as some of the contracts that are already in place through your different members. And of course, we also looked at if you were to privatize some of these collections. So when we looked at it, we said everyone is quite well suited to doing garbage collection. So we recommend that should probably stay in-house unless you choose to privatize it and contract it out. But in terms of looking at some of the other options when it comes to scale, you're looking at about say $22 if you were to contract out garbage and recycling, about $21 if you do garbage and organics, and no, that's not a typo. That's the cost just based on some of the contracts that we've seen in the region. And for all three streams, you're looking at about $27.70 to collect garbage, recycling, and organics. Okay, so it's a $1 million question. So at the start of the study, we actually looked at the option of recycling MRF in on the region. From looking at the way that the market is going right now, and also the potential EPR coming into Alberta, we don't think it's actually a very good idea to essentially have dedicated recycling facilities in the region. The reason being is that if you look around you in Calgary and that region, everywhere else, there are recycling facilities with capacity. So if you have your own, you run the risk of potentially having stranded assets should EPR come in. If EPR does come in, essentially what the private sector will be looking to do is sort of amalgamate a lot of these recycling facilities into sort of what they term to be super MRFs, because it's a lot cheaper for them to run larger facilities than smaller ones, right? So, and that's not to say that is off to do completely. In the report, we have outlined certain conditions that if you were to have the volumes to process, essentially, it may make economic sense at that point. But right now, with the current market conditions, it doesn't make sense to own and operate your own MRF. Next slide. But on the upside, in terms of organics processing, there is currently a shortage of organics processors out west. I think you get probably reading news quite often, and it's actually really interesting that news that these days actually focuses on solid waste, with a bunch of the facilities closing in Alberta as well as in BC. But there is a huge opportunity for a regional organics facility within the region. You know, when we looked at it, granted, it'd be a good opportunity to sort of gather all the organics from the region, but at the same time, from our analysis, 50,000 ton per year, what we call 50,000 plus ton per year facility is what we recommend to achieve economies of scale, to, you know, to manage your waste, as well as look towards some of the isolated customers within the municipality, as well as cities around the region. That being said, the reason that we recommended about 50,000 ton facilities because these things are quite expensive. You know, I'm gonna sit here and try to mislead you in that, but in terms of how do you do organics management correctly and responsibly, you're looking at a covered facility or an indoor facility. If you're looking at, say, a much more small scale operation, like some of the folks that have been closed down, you know, they aren't able to achieve economies of scale to actually get a proper facility that can really manage and mitigate odors. So in terms of what we see to be an economically viable facility, will be a facility that not only handles the region's waste, but also looks at IC&I. And with that being said, you can actually develop something that is covered or indoor, which is key to responsible operations and not being shut down. Right, and there are a lot of private entities out there that are actually looking for partnerships with different municipalities in terms of developing facilities like this. So recommendations. In terms of recommendations, you know, we recommend that you do move to a regional system. In terms of recommendation number one, regionalized curbside collection of residual waste, organics, and recycling. One of the key things is that, you know, looking at recommendation number 3, we think that you should actually keep all of your existing depots and actually align them and optimize them towards what you collect and how you collect it. So that is essentially standardizing your recycling system across the entire region. So that helps you get better access to markets in terms of some of the bulk materials and also the management and handling of some of your hazardous waste. So looking at next. Recommendations 5 through 9, sorry. Skipped ahead. So looking at this recommendation, so back to our previous discussion, we do not recommend that a MRF is advisable at this time within the region, given the current market conditions, and we think that it's a very prudent move for the region to investigate the potential of developing an organics processing plant within the region. And as I said before, there are private entities who are willing to partner with municipalities to do so. So recommendations 5 through 9, I won't get too much into details here, but essentially these are the tools and behaviors that you need to essentially implement to take your system to a regional system. Essentially, you can't go to a regional system unless you look at some sort of standardization across the board. So recommendations 5 through 9 address those recommendations. So recommendation number 10 and 11 focus on the landfill. So the landfill is your greatest asset. You know, looking at landfill capacity around Alberta, especially southern Alberta, Calgary right now is restricting exactly the type of materials that they're taking at their landfill and from where as well. So the regional landfill here has, you know, approximately between 60 to 80 years of capacity left, and you know, in our assessment, will be one of the last facilities standing in next 15-20 years. So how you use that resource is actually of paramount importance. So what we recommend here is that you sort of, you know, take a very, very good look at the types of waste that you accept at the landfill. So looking at the amount of non-MSW waste that you accept, essentially that's the non-MSW waste, though it makes you some money for tipping fees, takes up valuable airspace, as well as looking at recommendation on 11. So if any changes that you do propose to that facility should be carefully considered in terms of that long-term projection of airspace usage.
So just to interject, so if you use the simple numbers that you produced earlier, Okotoks is putting away 68%, Home's even, what, 32?
Yeah.
On the table to go to landfill.
Go to landfill, yes.
So really, if we bring every other community up to that same regional level,
exactly,
that's what you're striving at when you talk about the 60, 80-year lifespan,
exactly,
and then Calgary loses and comes in.
Exactly, and also, you know, just add to the point as well, you know, when you do add organics into that mix as well, there are other considerations as well in terms of the actual asset management of it, because as the organics decompose within the landfill itself, it produces greenhouse gas, and there are 2 landfills right now, both of my clients actually in Alberta, that are actually regulated, because, you know, they just packed a bunch of organic waste in, and now with the new regulations, they were assessed and now have to actually pay into buying carbon offsets, which increases your operational cost.
Good, thanks.
Okay. So the final recommendation is to regionalize the ownership and collection. Regionalize the ownership of collection assets and services. So that kind of ties everything together, and also gives you much better command of the market in terms of your recyclables, and also access to contracts, and lowers your operational costs. So looking at the horizons here, we, you know, in these recommendations thought that essentially the path to regionalization will be realized in about 3 horizons. 3 steps. So the first 2019 to 2024, next one 2025 to 2029, and then the third one 2030 to 2035. But you know, in terms of the presentation, what I'm going to actually really focus on is essentially horizon number 1, which is essentially the 12 recommendations I just walked you through, which will be done in 2019 to 2024. So essentially we're looking at getting started right away in terms of looking at how do we get everyone onto the same system, just because looking at the market right now, in terms of getting your recyclable materials to market, it's becoming more and more challenging for individual municipalities to do this on their own, as well as collection services and other waste management contracts. So in terms of our recommendation and analysis, it's best to get started sooner than later with this. So, and that brings my presentation to a close. If you guys have any questions, I'd love to have, I'll be happy to answer them.
Perfect, thank you. We're going to go to Deputy Mayor Holiday, then we're going to go to Councillor Hamilton. You just hit your button for me there, sir. Thank you. And then we'll be.
So we have some issues with numbers, but even using the ones that we have, it currently costs us $12 per month for gross expenses to run garbage. Under your analysis, it is saying that if we went to a regional system, it would cost us $14.70 a month. Okotoks right now is doing all 3 streams, and they're I think doing it privately for the recycling of organics, contracting it out. They're doing it for $25 a month. Under your option 4, under the regionalized collection services, to do that same thing, it would cost $27 when it's currently costing them $25. So how can you say it's recommended to collaborate when the costs are higher?
That's a very good question, actually. Sorry.
Go ahead.
That's a very good question, actually. So when you look at the Okotoks model, they, you know, as I said, that 60% is a little bit misleading in terms of the ICNI contribution to that. But when you look at the entire region, there's travel costs. So Okotoks is very close to Calgary, very close to some of these recycling centers and on depots like ECO and other facilities. But in terms of looking at the region, we would expect that there would be some more travel time, essentially. So that accommodates for the increase in costs. But at the same time, if you look at sort of the longer term benefit in terms of the airspace, as well as the regulatory commitments that your landfill has, you know, those costs are well justified in terms of the cost offset of not having to pay into a regulatory body for greenhouse gases, as well as the airspace that you would save from diversion.
Thank you. Follow up after. Councillor Hamilton.
Oh, sorry.
I know, it's a game of catch and mouse. Councillor Hamilton.
So recommendations 1 and 3, regionalize curbside residual waste collection utilizing existing assets and resources, and align and optimize existing recycle drop-off facilities. So where my question comes in is, we're talking about a curbside recycle program while also keeping open our regional depots, is that
Yes.
your suggestion? So the costs that you factored in for what that's gonna cost us per month, is that, are our operating costs of those facilities also included in your totals?
Yes, and as I said, you know, we sort of struggle with sort of breaking out exactly the cost for each service, including the depots, because some of the costs that we got were essentially the all-in costs. Sorry.
Oh.
There you go.
Sorry, the all-in costs for the solid waste program. But you know, when we do look at you know, if you were to remove the depots from service, the cost is going to increase, because you still need to find somewhere to take you know, your hazardous waste paint cans, drop off if local businesses do have a lot of cardboard and other recyclables. So those depots still play a very, very integral and critical role in your overall solid waste program, because they do help keep costs down by creating a central focal point for everyone to bring waste and ensuring that it's actually well sorted. But at the same time, your day-to-day collection will be better served with curbside collection.
Very good question, Councillor Hamilton, thank you. Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you for the presentation, I appreciate it. To be clear, I think, I just wanna be sure that I'm reading your recommendations correctly. Though it seems like your recommendations, you aren't recommending curbside recycling at this point in time, but organics collection, is that correct?
No, we are recommending curbside collection of recycling.
Recycling and organics?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
All three of them.
Okay, and I did just wanna follow up on the depots as well, only because, you mentioned optimizing, a number of different depots in the region. Can you elaborate on sort of what that might entail when I think about, you know, I get the idea that economies of scale, if we're operating as 5 different depots working together, there's probably something there, but can you give some examples of how that might work and how that could translate into more efficiently run depots?
Sure, definitely. You know, when you look at sort of the different streams that each depot collects, you know, for the most part, they're fairly aligned, but with different facilities, you look at, for example, glass. Glass is a negative commodity. Should all depots still collect glass, and there's no market to it for it? Probably not, right? So and when I say negative commodity, it's one of the only recyclable materials that you don't actively get a return for. I know in Alberta we're still used to going down to bottle depots and dropping bottles off and getting some money back for it as a kid. My daughter says she does that, she loves it. But in terms of when you do collect it at the depot level, you actually pay to dispose of it. So that's one instance, but also looking at, say, bulk plastics and bulk cardboard, if we were to sort of standardize how and what we collect, that lowers the rate of contamination. I just did a similar solid waste master plan just north of here, and a lot of depots were collecting different materials and, had different rules and different policies. What we found was that when you do bulk material together and consolidate it, you are having different levels of contamination, so of materials getting in there. But if you sort of standardize the way that these depots run across the region, you can actually mandate that these materials will be collected this way, at the ground level, and it's a consistent message and consistent product going to the end market.
Perfect, thank you.
So you're suggesting then that all 5, let's just use 5 plants, would then fall under one operation umbrella to mandate exact measurements of quality?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And, anyone within the region, can actually access these depots essentially, so, also in terms of some of the hazardous waste that you collect, your paint and batteries and stuff like that, there's a consistent messaging right across, so that when you do, bulk materials together, you know exactly what you're getting.
Councillor.
Yeah, thank you for the report. I'm just trying to get my head around recycling. I apologise, I might not be as quick as some of the others. We have a system at the moment where we take our recycling to our local recycling centre, we separate everything ourselves and put it in the necessary compartments. With curbside recycling, is it still a case of you throw everything into one bin and somebody's then going to separate it all at another point? And if so, why would we then keep the 2 systems, the take it here and separate it yourself, or just throw it all in the bin and forget about it?
Actually, a very good question, Councillor Waring. So, when we do look at sort of at the concept of regionalization, we looked at from the lens of getting everyone onto one system, and that's essentially the first step. Second step is to sort of design that program, and in terms of exactly what you toss into that bin has to still be determined based on the markets as well as sort of the end facility, right? But yes, in terms of the actual depots, the depots are meant for sort of the things that you can't put into that blue bin at the curbside. So if you do have, a local business, and essentially all of your IC9 waste, industrial commercial waste, can't fit into that blue bin of recycling, you still need someone to bring that material to show that it does get recycled, right? So the depots will still play a very, very critical part, but in terms of the day-to-day household collection, what we see is that there's some efficiencies in terms of giving everyone access to a blue bin, and sort of reserving, making way down to the depot for special circumstances granted. Not that they will be used, not used at all, but just used a little bit less in terms of the day-to-day walking traffic. But people, in my experience, I just came from the City of London, and I still maintain a number of these depots. You still have quite a bit of residential traffic when you do, say, an estate clean out or spring cleaning, stuff like that, and you just can't fit it all into that blue bin.
Can I just...
Yeah, absolutely, go ahead, Councillor.
So if I've heard you properly, then as a resident, I will put my recycle in my recycle bin each week. It will be collected and go away. If I have any odds and ends and bits and pieces that I find that I forgot about or whatever, I can just take them down and put them in the other place.
Yes.
Okay, I get it now, but it still comes back to what was said previously. We've now got the cost of 2 operations to run, but we're going to try to run as cheaper than we're doing one now. And I'm really looking forward to seeing those numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
One question.
I've got Rab, and then I got Gordon. And
Don't forget that.
yep, Lanza.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the same kind of train as Councillor Waring. Cause we gotta get paid $27 to do the recycling, and then we also have to keep the building open, which is gonna make that 27 slightly higher than that for sure. But my first question is regionalized curbside residual waste collection, utilizing existing assets and resources. So how are those assets that we have, or, you know, your number one recommendation? To utilize existing assets and resources. So how is that gonna be all sorted out? Are we gonna form a commission? Is it gonna be like, you know, just give away our truck, or what happens?
And that detail is actually still being worked out actually, so, excuse me, the part of the study we looked at was essentially the what, and in terms of the next steps, that's the how. So, you know, we are recommending to take a very, very close look at what it looks like. You essentially already collaborate across the region in terms of on the landfill, as well as a couple of water projects through the Regional Services Commission. So in terms of what that looks like, if you do sell the asset or transfer the asset, that is part of the how. But at this point, in terms of the study, we're looking at the what.
Okay. Want to follow up?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have one more question. The organics, you're suggesting 3 bins for curbside pickup, 1 which would be organics. What kind of stuff would be in the organics, and where does it go to? Would it head to the blue buildings in Calgary, or where does it go?
So, and again, we're looking at essentially food waste,
Yes.
right? So some folks in some municipalities would actually give you the option seasonally to top up with yard waste. Depending on the actual receiving facility, that program may be designed a little bit differently, right? So as I said, when you do drill down into the implementation of this program, we have to examine the cost efficiency of food waste alone, or food waste topped up with yard waste.
Where does it go?
Second part of your question, where does it go? So there are a number of facilities around southern Calgary. So right now, I think Okotoks is currently using GFL, their facilities. So it goes from to transportation there, and then to a third-party processor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gordon and Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you for putting this together. You kind of tweaked my interest a little bit by saying you just come back from London. I presume that's London, Ontario.
Yes.
I'm reading an article here from June of 2019 in Ontario. It says Ontario's recycling rates have been stalled for 15 years, and up to 30% of what is put into blue boxes are sent to landfill. There's a regional MRF in Durham region, east of Toronto, that doesn't do single stream, they do dual stream. So they've reduced that to 7%. Could you speak to what Alberta's rate is, what is putting into blue boxes right now, being sent to landfill, and have you look into a dual stream?
So as I said, you know, we don't recommend MRF locally, but in terms of the Alberta numbers, it's actually a very good question. What's reported for diversion is often a very subjective calculation. So looking at what the city of Calgary recently did in terms of disposing of all the clamshells, plastics into landfill, you know, that really puts some of those reported numbers into question. I'm not saying that that the allegation is wrong, but you know, when you do say that diversion, what is true diversion, as calculated, is material that is not in tune and can actually be recycled, or reused. You've been looking at another recent case in Calgary as well, where one processor, just because of the market of China is no longer taking out garbage. So what they've said is that they're actually stockpiling material for wasted energy. So they have dug a big hole and put material in and covered it up, right? That counts towards diversion at a later date, but it's not diversion right now. So in terms of commenting on the numbers, you know, for some of the other municipalities from a purely idealistic point of view, I like to refrain from doing that because I may actually incriminate myself with my opinions. So.
Well, if I read this report correctly on page 6, it looks like about 56% is landfill with residual at this point. But like you say, there's other playing factors, could be stockpiling and buried
Yes.
for temporary, so we'll take
Yeah.
what the report says and we won't let you.
Not to put my opinion into
That's
it.
right. Please, please. Councillor Hamilton.
Did you still have something?
I did, I'll go after you.
Yep.
Yep, okay. My question has to do with why we did, like, there wasn't more, of the presentation on third party. One of the things that was so intriguing to me about, looking into these options was getting away from the capital costs and the operating costs of buying trucks and maintaining buildings and, I'm just wondering why that option wasn't presented to council, or maybe why it wasn't followed through on. Like, I know originally it was in the discussion,
Yeah.
I'm just wondering why it's off the table.
No, so when we look at it, so in terms of recommendations, if you go back to the slide on the costing, just find it here, options analysis,
Page 15.
yeah. So that option still is on the table in terms of that third row.
So that would be complete third party, we wouldn't need any of our existing trucks or facilities.
Only for garbage collection, that's about it, right?
But you would, okay.
But if you had to do garbage only, right, across the region, you can do that with your existing fleet. And that's the reason that we don't look at the costs for option number one, in terms of privatization, because you already have all the resources to do it. But if you were to say, hey, I'm gonna look at garbage and recycling, you need some additional resources across the region to cover that, right? So that's why option number two, would involve a private entity at that point. But for option number one, you do have the capabilities, to do that within the region as is. Actually, you have more than capabilities, as I said before, you have excess truck capacity, right? So that's the reason that we don't look at privatizing garbage collection on its own.
Okay. Councillor Hamilton, all day. We're playing the late games. You're getting good out of that.
No, right, almost.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So Calgary announced earlier this month that it was closing 8 of its recycling depots, drop-off locations, down to 8, so they'll have 18 left. So a city of 1.3 million people, they have roughly 1 depot per 74,000 people. So why do we have one in Okotoks and High River and one for a population of 5,000 out here, if Calgary can get by with 1 depot for 74,000 people?
Actually a very, very good question. And so when we first started this study, what we did, we actually took the time to understand exactly what each solid waste system looked like within the region of each municipality, as well as what are the key driving factors and what's important to you. We got a sense from each depot that we visited in the region that it plays an integral part in the actual community. So as Councillor Warren alluded to, essentially, he goes to the depot head to drop his recyclables on a regular basis. On the onset of regionalization, we think that you should maintain the depots as is, but of course, as time progresses, and also looking at what the market dictates and the operating costs, look at narrowing the number of those depots within the region, and of course that would be offset by looking at the efficiency and effectiveness of your curbside collection, right? So when you do change, we typically find that change is best done gradually. If you were to come with drastic changes to any program, you would see inconsistency, lack of understanding, as well as low usage rates. So for initial recommendation, we recommend that you keep the depots in place, and as time goes on and you find efficiencies, then you start reducing the number of depots.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any comments? I think we got lots to chew on here. Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. Can we get some motions coming out of the presentation, please?
Except for information.
Excellent. We're gonna accept it for information by, Deputy Mayor Holiday. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you did better than an hour, so you're
Thank you.
in the good books right there.
Well, this is my
Efficiency, yeah.
fifth one, I think.
Well, there you go.
So,
Well, thanks for coming out, guys.
well, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And,
you.
drive safe for sure.
Thanks.
You can stick around for another 2 hours if you wish.
Sure, boss.
I'll watch out for deer.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. 7.1, Chief Administrative Officer's Report. Mr. Sharp.
Nothing tonight, here.
We're good, thank you. Administrative responses, we have no items. 9.1, administrative inquiries, we have none this time. And bylaws and policies, 10.1, we have no items. That was planned because we have a capital budget and an operating budget, and we have lots to talk about, so that's good. Okay, 11, old business, the 2020 capital budget forecast and projections, along with the Q&A answers that we requested from our last meeting, October 7th. Mr. Sharp, I will hand it over to you again. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Crane. While Ms. Middleton's having a seat, just a couple of introductory comments. So this evening we have our third and what we hope is our final presentation to council, where we have returned with some final answers from questions council had a couple of weeks ago. And so our goal today is to work through the remainder of those questions and then seek an answer from council as to how they wish to proceed on the proposed capital budget. And following that, we will then move into operating.
Thank you. Ms. Middleton, whenever you're ready, you can hit your lights. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to present a bit of a third draft, keeping in mind that there were no real changes in the numbers themselves, but just following up on some questions that were brought up from the October 7th meeting. So just to follow up, there were a number of questions with respect to SCADA. One of the questions was detailed cost of the SCADA projects for Royal Light Lift Station and Bailey Lift Station. What a SCADA system will do, and does it prevent leaks? A little bit of clarity around what municipalities are using SCADA, and are they in fact using it as a mechanism to monitor their lift station activity. So other project questions, and I can just go through these as well. The contributions that can be accessed for the Dunham Lane project, Gooding Lane, and do we have the capability to use offsite levies or other means as a partial mechanism to pay for the project? Garbage truck question around would it be possible to lease rather than buy? And we do have an answer here, and I'll clarify it as we go. And are the costs for the are the costs that were presented for the newer garbage truck, or do they represent costs for the older truck? Alright, so some of the answers that have come out of these questions. We currently have the cost breakdown for both the Bailey Lift Station and the Royal Light Station. So on the left-hand side is the Bailey Lift Station, and the SCADA costs for that are approximately $82,000. And this includes local controls upgrade, instrumentation upgrade, communications, programming, and commissioning. And then the other aspects of the Bailey lift station, are the chain link fence and some contingencies and engineering costs for a total cost of $110,000. On the right-hand side, we have the Royal Light lift station. And once again, the SCADA costs are approximately $87,000, which includes basically the same components and cost breakdown as the Bailey lift station. As well included are dark sky LED lighting, chain link fencing, and contingencies for those costs plus engineering of 15%. So, in general, the two lift stations would have a similar scope of work. However, with Bailey, the control panel is outside. As such, there are a few extra components needed to protect the panels from freezing. So that is why the Royal Light lift station is slightly different costing. For Royal Light, the transfer switch needs to be upgraded due to its age, whereas Bailey has a fairly new transfer switch, so this would not need to be completed. Both stations will need to be programmed so that all components and alarms are integrated into the existing system. So I'm gonna go back to the other SCADA questions that we did have. So will the SCADA system prevent leaks? So currently, the structure that we're going to have with these is they would be somewhat difficult to track leakage of sanitary waste, as it would require installation of flow meters on every service level line connection to a main line and flow meters at every terminus. So the way the system is currently structured would not necessarily prevent leaks or would not diagnose leaks. As far as the municipalities utilizing SCADA systems, this is common through most municipalities. Foothills County, Village of Longview, High River, Rocky View County, Alderside, and Black Ear, just some different municipalities that are utilizing SCADA systems. So it's popular and it's used in most areas that have any kind of water treatment facilities.
Okay, I just got a question. I got Waring and then Hamilton. Go ahead, Waring.
Yeah, I actually have answered it, but the question I gave last week was not would it prevent leaks, but would it notify of leaks? In other words, if there's a leak in the system, will it tell us? I understand it can't prevent leaks.
Go ahead.
So based on the information here, I may have to provide a clarification on the question, as I don't know that the information I did provide you would specifically answer it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Malika, sure.
I believe it's already been answered. The ability's there, but I think maybe the question in the last council meeting was probably pertaining more to tracking water leakage as opposed to wastewater leakage. There's ways of monitoring it, but you need to monitor it at the start, at the end, and if there's any service connections in between, you should monitor all that because you need to have some comparables. So it's probably not the most practical. We don't do that, but I suppose with the right amount of money and technology, you can implement it and SCADA, and it would allow you to track. But we're not tracking; it's too cost prohibitive.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks. I think my question from last week got missed. I asked it, I think, the first meeting as well. What our cost savings would be if we implemented the SCADA equipment, like if there would be a savings for operator callouts and maybe what that would be. Council was kind of interested in wondering what the return on investment would be on spending $180,000. Actually, it's somewhat more than that. That's just the SCADA cost. So I'm not sure if administration looked into that or not, but it is something that I would be interested to know, that if we do purchase this equipment, is there going to be savings found elsewhere in our budgets?
Okay. Go ahead. Thank you.
So when we looked at the cost previously, and we could only identify where we had one or a couple of instances where we had individuals go to the lift stations, my thought is what we could do is go back and perhaps talk with other municipalities to determine whether they have a costing mechanism for how they would determine whether you are saving costs on having a lift station, because based on the information and data we have, I'm not sure that we can accurately project that. In fact, I don't believe we probably could.
Okay, Councillor Hampton.
It's not on if there's a benefit to having the lift station, it's if there's a benefit to having the SCADA. Is the communication is what my question is. Like somehow our operators are getting an alarm if there's something wrong at the lift station. So my question regarding the SCADA is if we're going to spend $180,000 on a piece of equipment that notifies operators or communicates with operators, is it going to save the operators time? You know, call-outs in the middle of the night, is there going to be a cost benefit to salaries and wages if we purchase this equipment, I think is what I'm trying to ask.
So through the mayor, if I can address that. So as far as having fewer employees or fewer costs.
No.
Excuse me, through the mayor,
Yeah.
Ms. Middleton can't see that Mr. Malenka is standing up behind her. He's prepared to give you an operational perspective.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Malenka.
Through the mayor.
I didn't know she.
I believe in the last two council meetings, we've also indicated it's primarily for preventive maintenance. So it isn't easy to quantify what our cost benefit is with regards to whether we go with a staff setup or a non-staff setup. We've made the commitment in previous years to move towards a SCADA system for all our infrastructure, be it wastewater and water. So we are basing our recommendations on continuing that process. We also have budgeted items in years to come with regards to the PRVs, pressure release valves as it relates to water. One thing we can tell you is if we're on a SCADA system, we have one individual who's monitoring all the devices or all the facilities off of one device, and that's 24/7. There's certain individuals who are on the clock 24/7 if something should go on and the alarms go off. If something happens in one of our facilities not monitored by SCADA, there's gonna be a lag in where we're gonna find that out depending on what the issue is, because it's not reporting back to us, it's not feeding us data, there's no alarms going on. What we typically do, as I understand it, in facilities that aren't managed by SCADA, is there's a rotation. So staff who monitor the PRVs or the water treatment plant, or the lift stations, excuse me, they have to be on a regular maintenance route, so they have to check that on a regular basis. I don't have that frequency level for you, but they have to, in order to properly watch over the system, they have to visit the system, do their rounds, if you will. There's time involved in that. Is the cost savings, is there a benefit for staffing? Minimal. Again, it's a cost, it's a preventive maintenance component that is ultimately the benefit, I think, and why SCADA was probably chosen as the option to go forward in years past. Unlike some other municipalities that may use wireless technology or cell phone / wireless technology, these are basically free to operate. Once they're up and running, it's just radio waves are going off. So operationally, year after year, there'll be some cost savings on the staffing end of it, definitely. Being more reactive, which I think that's hard to put a number on it, should we have an incident, and how quickly we can respond to a leak or a break in the system if it's showing that we have a complete failure in water or whatever the case may be, or pressure release valve blows. So yeah, we don't have that breakdown for you. It's, again, there's some staffing component to it. It's not significant in relation to the cost. The upfront cost hopefully is justified by the long-term savings and the ability to be effective and responsive.
I have one more quick follow-up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. One more quick follow-up. You said currently there's no alarm, so our system, if it were to go down at those two lift stations, it does not alarm.
My understanding is that we have to have staffing there to go and actually visit the facility.
If it alarms, or does it alarm?
I don't have that information if it actually is. There are certain alarms in certain ways, so I can't give you that. If it's, I know for a fact it's not communicating back and forth to the main operator, so I'd assume that there may be alarms going off in the building, but it's not relaying back to the main operator.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Wilkie here first.
Thank you. I do just want to clarify something, and I'm slightly sleep deprived at the moment, so I'm probably just reading it wrong, but can you clarify why the numbers we're seeing here, the total project cost on these is different from what we're seeing on the capital budget sheet? It's 110,000 in one and 90,000 in the other. What's the difference there?
I'm gonna divert your question to Mr. Malenka.
Thank you.
Alright, thank you.
Through the mayor, that one's mine. When we were doing a detailed analysis as we were asked for, we ended up catching a little bit of an error on my end. MP was providing us information on a more general level, not the specifics. When you asked for the specifics, then we got into a little bit deeper and realized actually I'm missing a number. So we had 90, the 125 for Royal Light is what's in the package as I understand it. However, the Bailey lift was coming in at 90 in the package, and it's actually 110. Now, keeping in mind we have 30% for contingency in engineering, so there's room to move on those things should the installation be fairly seamless. MP's been involved in installing SCADA systems for a number of years now for our facility, and they are the ones who provided us with some of the information for other municipalities using the system, so they have experience. So we expect the cost to be down slightly, but you're right, there is a change in the numbers from 90 to 110 on the Bailey lift station. 110 is more accurate. Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, this question is for administration as a whole. I'm all for supporting risk management, having loss prevention in place, having the ability to reduce the consequences of a loss. Could you give us a scenario, not necessarily the worst case scenario, but if we don't put in a SCADA system and we just wait on the regular maintenance that goes on, the alarming that's going on right now to advise that there could be a failure. If we don't go down that path, give me a scenario, what could we expect to see in a worst case scenario if there was a failure at the lift station? I mean, how likely is that gonna happen? Because risk management looks at the evidence of the law of large numbers, theory of probability. I don't have anything to base a theory of probability on to say, yeah, let's go ahead and put $235,000 into two lift station, into two SCADA operations.
Through the mayor, I can't give you that answer, to be blunt. I'm not an operator, I don't understand the facility, I don't have the experience. If council wants to go down that road and ask that question, we probably wanna bring in the operator that actually oversees the whole SCADA system as well as these systems that aren't on SCADA. And that'd probably be the most appropriate person to bring in and answer that question. Cause I wouldn't be able to give you the slightest idea on how to answer that, so my apologies on that side. Thank you, Mr. Murray. Councilor Rapp.
Yeah, if I understood you correctly, you said there've been a couple of visits to those sites, or they visit them every day to check on those sites, are you aware of that?
It's my understanding that they have to be scheduled. I don't know the frequency for scheduling. Again, operator would be more than happy to probably answer that question. They have to keep logs anyways, I understand it.
Yes.
So I don't have that specific, if it's weekly, daily, monthly.
Right, it goes back to me for needs or wants. Do we really need this, or we just want this? I mean, everybody would agree that it makes perfect sense, it'd be nice to have, etc. But it's $170,000, and I think if you spend $400 per week to have somebody cover and do the inspection, that would be, I would think that could be 2 call-outs at $200 a crack, you know, and that's every week. That's still only $20,000 a year, as opposed to 170 capital budget. So for me, you know, I have to be convinced that this is gonna be life-saving, and I'm unconvinced as of yet, sorry.
Okay, through the mayor. Thank you. Sure, go ahead. Sorry, if I may. So just to reiterate, and council's probably seen this in their packages a few times now since we've been addressing it, is under the justification for both lift stations, it's a administration recommendation. So we're not saying it's critical like some of the other capital asset items. This is just something that we, as it's sort of classified, makes sense criteria. So it's something we suggest to make sure we're maintaining our equipment and facilities. It's not critical.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hawley.
Yeah, you made mention that they have to go around to be watching PRVs. That's something else that's going to have to be updated eventually too. Is that at the same location? So even if we replace SCADA, they're still making the same rounds to check these PRVs that you're talking about?
Through the mayor, the only PRV that comes to mind right now, and excuse me for missing the other one, is the one by Culkin's Place. So Culkin's Place has a PRV there. There's also a lift station there, but that one already is working and set up. So I can't think of the other PRV at this time, so I can't give it to you. But they're off. They're not the same. They're not matching.
They're not these ones. Okay.
Yeah, the PRVs and the lift stations typically aren't in the same locations. They're one's for sanitary, one's for water, so they're typically in different locations throughout the community. Okay. Again, this is for information because we're going to bring it to a vote later. But Councilor Rapp. Okay, you're good. Okay. Okay, everyone's had a go at SCADA. I'll have a go at it too. It's an upgrade that streamlines the efficiencies in the long run for me. It's something we invested in the past, and these are the last two. So, for me, it's finish it up and then everything's on the same level, and you're not gonna be worrying about it. But, that's just my 2 cents. So, next, we're gonna move on from SCADA to the next question. Thank you.
So thank you through the mayor. So the other questions that came up were about the contributions that can be accessed for the Dunham Lane project. And once again, I'm gonna defer this to Mr. Malenka.
Change the slide. Do we have a slide? Sorry, yeah, the map would be perfect. Yeah, there we go, perfect. Mr.
Thank you. I was trying to figure out the best way to sort of illustrate this for everybody's benefit, and I guess I'll find out here in a few minutes if I did that or if I'm missing the mark here. So this gives you the 800-meter stretch of Dunham. What it does is it runs from Main Street to the east and all the way to the end of Dunham. It does not include the section that kind of curls up to the north. We left that one alone. We're sort of focused on, selfishly, we're focused on our lots that are in with the town of Turner Valley as opposed to the Foothills County. So what you can see there in different shades of colors, different developments at different stages, some not developed at all. So starting from the left and working my way to the right, or west to east, is Country Meadows Phase 5. Their 11-lot subdivision. They contributed $4,813 in offsite levies. They did not provide contributions with regards to improvements to Dunham Lane. That one wasn't being picked off at the engineering stage on the review of the subdivision, nor was it picked off on the subdivision review for the upgrades. So that one was, I wouldn't say missed, it wasn't identified as upgrades being required. As we're getting a bit more effective with our communication between our engineering consultants ourselves and what our expectations are, my asks are a little bit different. The developer had argued and was fair enough in their argument that the offsite levies, the way they're drafted, money's provided for the offsite levies for transportation. And if you read the offsite levy bylaw as it pertains to Dunham Lane, is the offsite levies for not only land along the south end, but all the future development to the north is factored into paying for Dunham. The one thing with the offsite levy that's from 2004 falls short is that we're not moving in a northerly direction for land in Turner Valley. So we are not anytime soon annexing or going after any land or developing any land north of here. So I'm not sure, we had lots of internal discussions on why that was even in the bylaw, considering there was nothing officially in play about annexing land to the north, so why would we factor that in? But it was, as such, factored in. So the argument being is that, well, the offset levy bylaw is so much per acre, and that's based on a bigger area, and the catchment has not transpired, if you will. Everything to the north isn't practical or going to happen anytime soon under the current structure. In the case, continuing to move to my right or to the east, we have what I'll refer to as the developed lands, the church site. Now, they're developed, so unless they come back for additional development on the lands or subdivision, there's no mechanism or opportunity for either us to get money off of offsite levies or to get money to upgrade that, upgrade the road in front of them through any mechanism. So they could stay in their current setup where they are, occupying the site as they do, and there's nothing in our system or our bylaws or policies that allows us to ask them or require them to put money towards upgrading Dunham. Continuing east, we have the undeveloped site that sits there. We expect at some point in time that will be developed, and that's why I have the TBD, to be determined amounts. So we'll collect the offset levies for transportation based on whatever the offset levy may say at the time. Plan is hopefully to work on an offset levy bylaw in 2020, so we can make a lot of those adjustments and updates. So for now, we don't know what that is, but there'd be an opportunity to collect offset levies for this. Now, if we were to move forward with Dunham in 2020, this developer didn't come forward until 2024, for example,
We'd still be collecting levies potentially, depending on the way the levy's drafted. But we may not be able to do on the off-site costs, so asking the developer to pay for the upgrades. Sorry, let me correct that actually. On the off-site component where we can ask the developer to contribute, if they come in for the development permit or a subdivision, we can ask them to do upgrades through the approval process. So in that case, we can. The off-site levies will depend on timing. If the road has been built, let me back up. If the road's been built already and they develop in 4 years, yeah, there won't be a mechanism to collect funds off of that because it'll already be constructed unless we do some kind of deferred cost sharing program. Moving further east, we have what's referred to now as Blue Rock Heights, to some Sky Mountain Phase 2. For whatever reason at the time, we didn't actually collect the off-site levy. What we did collect was a deposit or a security in the amount of $166,000. This was the one we spoke of 2 council meetings ago with regards to, right now the developer and their engineers have indicating they can do that road improvement that they're responsible for, which is highlighted in blue, and you'll see there's a little kink there that's left out, and that's as per the development agreement at the time. And what that indicates, the developer's coming in and saying they can do that for about half the cost in the current market conditions. They would rather do that than have them on the hook for the $166,000. Right now, our cost estimate, which came in at $1,025 up to the first lift, is based on conservative estimates with our external engineers based on the averages that they have for this year. If we can come in and the market is similar this year to next year, and we can get more competitive rates, then we can potentially considerably lower than that. But we be on the conservative side because we don't want to jeopardize providing the lower numbers and then circumstances change. So right now they're anxious to get going with their upgrades to Dunham because we're holding the line, if you will, saying, no, our actual costs are not 166. Our actual cost estimates came in at about 186 based on today's numbers. Keeping in mind this agreement was done, it was 217, so costs have gone up slightly. Moving further east to the right, Dunham Court, so it's an 11-lot subdivision there. We're currently working on a development agreement and securities with them. They paid offsite levies a number of years ago, so they actually contributed $5,400 in offsite levies. And when we work out the development agreement and the engineering drawings are set up to capture that blue area you see sitting in Dunham Lane. So they will be required to not only pay offset levies, but to pay the upgrades onto Dunham. And second, I guess last, is future development site. Now it's, for lack of better words, a country residential parcel. We haven't had any discussions with the landowner if they have any future development potential or interest. But I do treat that as a future development site that down the road, maybe higher and better use is not that of a single lot, it's that of multi-lot, whatever that may look like. So there's potential to get money off of off-site levies and or upgrade costs, but not at this time or not anywhere in the near future. And finally, the little brown parcel, it fronts onto Dunham. There's not a whole lot we can do, it's a single family house. So it's basically a loss leader. We're not gonna be able to get levies off of that because it is not going to be subdividing or breaking up any further. But it does take advantage of any improvements to Dunham, albeit somewhat indirectly.
Okay, so, thank you. So again, the pavement only goes up to the colored zone. It does not extend past the green to the north, or sorry, to the west or the left on the drawing as we see, correct? From the green back.
Based on our comments, or based on our submission to council was to do all of Country or all of Dunham Lane, which is to take it all the way from Main Street all the way to the end before it kinks up. Now, if council so chooses, because we don't have funds from the developed portion in yellow or from Country Meadows 5, we can reduce that to 600 meters, which approximately puts us at the Country Meadows Street intersection. So everything heading east from there could be paved. That represents about a $750,000 cost. But our proposal with you in front of you right now is based on doing all 800 meters.
Okay, perfect. That's what I wanted to know. Okay, council. Deputy Mayor Holiday, no, Waring was up first, then Holiday. Waring. Good. He's good now? Holiday. Right?
So, to be clear, Dunham Court is responsible, are they responsible for paving that themselves or not?
Through the mayor, the way we've structured the development agreement in its current draft form is yes, every piece of land or every part of Dunham in front of their parcel is gonna be required for them to upgrade it to our standards. So they will be paying the cost for that, yes.
And same with Blue Rock Heights. So what is the cost of doing only the little orange house and the future development site?
We're looking at, again, this is some fuzzy math, because if we're just doing small sections, but based on the $1,025,000 number we provided, over the 800 meters, it works out to about $1,281 a meter. So, the little parcel, I don't have frontage on the little parcel. I do have frontage on the future development site, so it's 100 meters. We wanna do. You may just wanna look at it as being 20 meters, so that brown parcel being approximately 20 meters in length, plus the future development site being 100 meters, it fits us at 120 meters. Just bear with me.
It's more than 20.
Yeah, with the driveway there, or the alleyway.
That works out to approximately $154,000 for that stretch there you're asking about.
That would be the future development plus the yellow, Councillor.
And what I would point out is if council's thinking that maybe we are just responsible for the future development in the brown portion, that may be the case. Two developers could do the other portion. But I would suggest that $1,281 per meter cost is gonna change. It's probably gonna go up. There's mobilization costs that come in just for showing up with the equipment and operating that may change the per meter cost. There's definitely savings in cost. The more you pave, the cheaper your costs are because you can spread it out. So if you're looking at doing it that way, just keep in mind that's probably a pretty conservative number.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Deputy Mayor Holder?
But if they can do their portions for less than we can do it, is that really a concern?
Through the mayor, it's a tough one because right now we can't beat that because we're not out to tender ourselves. There's part of us that think we'd have a pretty good chance of getting some good numbers, but we can't say, well, we wanna use that contractor to do the rest of Dunham. We have procurement policies in place that we have to put it out to bids. So who knows what we'll end up with next year if we move forward. So we can't let the developers go ahead and do their work. I've referenced it to being patchwork. It can happen, it can be done. What we have asked Blue Rock to do, depending on how the budget goes, if we do anything next year or not, is explore the opportunity where they don't do the final lift. They do the first lift and they hold the final lift until a couple of years, and then we can come back and smooth out everything that's been done. So if Blue Rock Heights comes in, Dunham Court comes in, let's say the undeveloped site, the green site, comes in to the west of there in the next couple of years. And then we come back with a final code, we can smooth all that off. But in the meantime, it may be a little patchy going back and forth, back and forth.
Okay, comments? Move on to the next one. Larry?
I think this is another one of those is we don't have to, but it's a wish rather than a need. And for me, it can be delayed.
Rad, then Hamilton.
I just saw a real nice looking John Deere grader coming out of the back alley by my house today. Maybe we can put this baby on hold and save $1 million for that $4.4 million project next year.
Hamilton?
I was just wondering with the Country Meadows Phase 5, that's something that just was approved in 2019. Is this something where we could go back to the developer in regards to their frontage, or?
Through the mayor, we attempted to do that. But the way the offsite levy bylaws drafted, the way we don't have engineering comments supporting paying for the upgrades, our hands are essentially tied. But we did go and ask more of a goodwill request than anything. And they were fully aware of what the responsibilities were under what we had them under bylaws and under arrangements were on the engineer drawings. So, no, that's not something we can go back on.
Very well, so in other words, we need to rewrite our 2004 bylaw pretty soon.
Through the mayor, to the mayor, yes, correct. That offset levy bylaw if you take a good read of it, it is, it's fairly old, a lot of things have changed since then. And, clearly when half of the lands that are part of that catchment for Dunham are not even in play for the town, we're really missing out on opportunity. Those offsite levy costs for the roads, could be upwards of double of that, and we can see more around recovery. Plus, the cost at the time for coming up with the levies is a lot different than what the costs are now to do Dunham Lane. So, yeah, it's an old document that I think is definitely, damaging a bit to us.
Deputy Mayor Holiday, and then I think we're ready to move on to our next question. Go ahead.
Alright, I don't know if I'm missing something, but how are we able to do it for Blue Rock Heights and Dunham Court, but we weren't able to do it for Country Meadows Phase 5, if they're the same offsite levy policy in place? In fact, Country Meadows is an even more recent one. I'm confused why Blue Rock has to pay for theirs and Dunham Court do, but Country Meadows Phase 5. Am I missing, is there something I'm missing?
So through the mayor, if you look at the plan, I understand it's a little tough to read there, but Country Meadows 5 actually paid their offsite levies, so we collected offsite levies from them. We just didn't collect construction improvement costs for Dunham Lane over and above offsite levies.
It's like $4,800.
What we were able to do, I can't speak to Blue Rock Heights, we didn't, as I indicated, we didn't collect offsite levies from them for transportation. We did for, common services and, site-specific under the bylaw, but at the, whatever the terms were at the time, they had left out the transportation component. Whether that's because they factored it into the 166, I can't speak to that, maybe that was the logic behind it. But typically, the bylaw is the bylaw, and you gotta ask for that money regardless. You don't have any ability to exempt it. At Dunham Court, we did collect the offset levies years ago before even subdivision approval came through, and that did pass legal at the time, so that was appropriate. So offset levies, we actually collected it from Country Meadows 5. You may be referring to the fact that we didn't collect actual costs for upgrading Dunham, because that is the one difference between Blue Rock Heights and where we plan on going with Dunham Court. And as I've alluded to, is the engineering comments didn't come back and indicating that upgrading of Dunham was a requirement for the developer. We didn't do it on subdivision as a result of the engineering comments. And therefore, once the condition was done, the engineering drawings were done, and now they would go back on it. The offsite levy, the way it's written, is clear. Improvements to Dunham should be covered off of offsite levies. And that's how they came back at us and said, you got no other mechanism to require us to do it. There's no engineering support for it, there's no subdivision condition for it, and they are correct. So unless that subdivision doesn't get registered and expires, it's probably the only option to revisit this. Anyway, so that's all I have for you.
No, that's great, thank you. I think the letters are just slightly mixed there. The OSL, I think you just gotta put the S in the front, and that's probably where your money is. So, moving on. Are we all good now? Okay, next question.
So through the mayor, one of the other questions,
Oh, sorry. Play the button, Dave. Okay, your turn.
so one of the other questions was in reference to Gooding Lane and having the capability to use off-site levies as a partial mechanism to pay for the project. And I believe we addressed this on the October 7th meeting and stating that yes, we would have the capability to use off-site levies. Keeping in mind that this project is also discretionary, so it is just one that has come forward just because of the timing of some other projects that are coming forward. So I don't believe we have anything further on that particular question. As far as the garbage truck and the possibility to lease rather than buy, a couple of things that have come up with that. One, we have an arrangement with Black Dawn, and so any kind of lease versus buying would have to be something that would be agreed jointly between the two of us. As well, the capability to lease a garbage truck is a little bit more challenging than simply leasing a normal vehicle, and so I would be hesitant as to leasing it versus making an outright purchase. Another question that has come up was in respect to the costs and whether those costs represent the 2015 Freightliner, the newer garbage truck, or whether they represent a combination of both the 2007 truck and the 2015, and I can provide a breakdown. And so we do have an obligation between Black Diamond and ourselves to maintain both of those vehicles, as the older garbage truck is used as a backup in case we should have some issues with the newer vehicles. So this just provides a further detail, and how this is divided up is the truck is considered, and this is my new technical knowledge of a garbage truck. There's a chassis, which is the truck part, and then there's the compactor, which is the compactor component, and they're considered separate units. And so this details the breakdown of 2019 costs, 2018 and 2017. And as you can see, we haven't put any kind of dollars towards the 2006 garbage truck, but we since 2017, but we have been putting those costs to the newer 2015 Freightliner.
Yep, go ahead.
Very quick clarification. Are these Turner Valley share numbers, or is this the gross?
So through the mayor, this is the Turner Valley share of the costs. So it would be double if you consider both Black Diamond and ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Questions on garbage truck? Good. Does that bring us to our end? Unless you have more. All right, I'm gonna hand her off to Todd, Mr. Sharp. Just to verify, we're gonna go through this, if council's comfortable. I'd like to go through this line by line as outlined on page 7. Write down the list. If there's, I think they're all on here, but I don't see the truck on this list.
It's on the next page.
Okay, there it is. Okay, so, Mr. Sharp, is that our list?
That is our list, Mayor. So in the RFD before you, administration is recommending that council approves the capital budget as we presented, but judging from the conversation, that's not likely to happen. So we did give council another option, which would be to go through the proposed list line by line, and we can vote on each item, therefore giving administration clear direction on each item. What we would then do is, if it pleases council, is roll those approved items back up into what we would call our 5-year plan, our 6-year plan, 1+5, because we need to show the province we've contemplated the future as well too. But anything beyond 2020 is simply a place marker for where we feel may be coming down the pipe, subject to change from year to year, obviously with priorities and other things that emerge. So having said that, I think I still want to turn it over to Karine to walk us through those steps, the line by line, if that's okay with you, Mayor Crane, and we can have a motion on each one if that's what you so choose.
I believe that's how we're looking to proceed. Line by line is good with everyone. Mr. Waring?
Yes, sir.
Wilkie? Yes. Gordon? Holiday?
Yep.
Hamilton? Brad?
Yep.
Okay. Ms.
Question.
Middleton? Oh, yes, go ahead.
Sidewalk improvements, can we get a local improvement on those? Contribution. We have done it in the past.
Go ahead.
So through the mayor, I've provided some funding sources that I believe would be suitable. I would have to go back and explore if we would prefer to do that through a local improvement levy.
I believe that's been done in the past in terms of.
And it absolutely has been done in the past.
I understand what you were asking now. Yes. Caught me off guard for a second, but yes, I totally see what you're saying. Deputy Mayor Holiday, and then we'll get to Chris.
Yeah, I'm happy to go through line by line because we haven't actually hashed things out and debated and figured out where everyone sits and heard everyone's ideas. But I want to make mention that obviously we can vote yes or no, but we can also vote on individual items to think on them further. It shouldn't just have to be a yes or no. We can also decide to get more information and to think a little bit more, because some of these things I'm very clear on and some I'm not, and once I hear the debate from fellow councillors, I might want to think on it before I make a final decision.
Okay, I think Corinne's gonna clarify some stuff for us, and we can totally do that. We could accept 80% and then bring back the last bit and in 2 weeks finalize it if that's the case. But I'll let you lead us off. You have quick intro for us.
So, as you see in front of you, we have the 2020 capital projects for decision. So, on the project listing, we have a total of 2.436 million. The first project we have is Dunham Lane paving. It is 800 meters of paving. We have a number of funding options available. The estimated project cost is $1.025 million.
You wanna go around the line?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were, okay. So,
You wanna go down the line or?
we can go down the line. So Dunham Lane paving is our first one up. We're gonna just go, okay.
We need a motion for this.
Well, we need a discussion, we need a motion, and then discussion, and a vote. So we can keep it simple, we can keep it long. So, if you wanna start, go ahead.
Motion. Are we doing a motion?
Motion
Make a
first,
motion,
yeah.
whoever wants to make a
Yeah,
motion.
keep it in or take it out.
I make. I'll make a motion to take it out.
Okay, we're going to remove / defer 1,025,000. Conversation. Todd? Good? Okay, Councillor Rabb?
I would support that motion, but, just because I think there's a lot of loose ends to tidy up, and I think Mr. Malink is trying really hard to do that, but perhaps we need a bit more information, so I could put that on a whole loop better.
Yep, go ahead, Mr.
If I can make a suggestion to council, that putting negative motions across on these items isn't the right way to go about it. Certainly, if we can't find a councillor who's prepared to make a positive motion in favor of approving that item, we know where it's gone,
Sure.
and we'll have to defer. But we need a motion on the table, so we would prefer positive motions on each of these, and then if they're voted down, we can live with that answer.
Okay, sounds good. Councillor Waring?
I don't want to make a positive motion.
Rescind yours. Okay,
Yeah, okay.
okay, rescinded. Councillor Rabb, would you make a motion?
Not a positive one, though.
Councillor Hawley?
Motions don't have to be positive.
Just because you make a motion doesn't mean you can't vote against
That's
it,
right.
right?
That's
There's no
right.
rules on that, so,
Correct.
yeah, I'll make the positive motion, and as long as I can speak negatively afterwards.
You can speak against it.
I'll make the motion for you, for Dunham Lane paving for 1 million, and it was actually me that wanted this investigated, so thank you for your time on it. I would be interested in finding out maybe for next year, once we know some of the other things, just to get it up to the major developments, those first 2 parcels. I'm not interested in paying all the way to the end. Now that we know some numbers, I'd be interested in doing a very preliminary base coat maybe next year on those first 2 lots that are never gonna get done, just so we don't have the gravel and the mud going into those new developments that we're hoping will sell well. But I think that can be looked into for next year, because there's so much uncertainty with budgets right now. So, I'll make the motion, but I'm voting against it.
There's all that in the motion.
Excellent, thank you. Any discussion? Wilkie?
That's the solution.
Go ahead.
I agree with Deputy Mayor Holiday. I can't support it for the entire length. I would be interested, or I would entertain potentially spending from reserves should one of the developers go forward and they have a solid quote, and we were to see, you know, that first portion, let's get to where they're paving to come before us, and it was at a good cost. I could see myself getting comfortable with it in that circumstance, but I cannot support it as it stands right now.
Thank you. All right, I think everyone's had their say more or less on this in prior, so I'm gonna call a vote. All in favor of the motion? All opposed? Okay, that's defeated. Can I make a motion to kitty $200,000 for the Dunham Lane paving project into a reserve for next year?
Just did.
unallocated reserve.
Absolutely. So, I'm gonna make that motion that we allocate $200,000 into a reserve for the future paving of Dunham Lane. And to speak to the motion, the reason I wanna do that is because we're not gonna take a bigger hit yet again. We've talked about reserves multiple times up here. This is obviously, from that map, we can see that the bylaw worked against us. It was something that was never considered because traditionally the MDs took care of the north. It's not the case now. However, I think this is an ample time to put away a little bit of a kitty so that the pain is less in the future. It's not a big amount. It's a fit. Go ahead, Councillor Waring.
Where are you gonna get the 200,000 from? Property tax?
This is where we get everything else. Go ahead.
So to satisfy that resolution of council, you could do a sideways shuffle of money out of reserves, for example, or set aside some reserves from grants and earmark it for a portion of Dunham Lane. We could set up a reserve account for that. That would be one option. But the pragmatic side says we're setting money aside each year for capital deliberation, regardless of whether it's set aside for Dunham Lane or other items, and we know we've got a big list of other items. So shuffling money around in reserves, I don't know if it does anything but ties the hands of council in the future into how you can use that money. Secondly, you could set money aside in the operating budget, move it into capital for the purposes of Dunham Lane, but then there's an operating budget implication and a tax implication to doing that. So I just wanted to advise council on both of those things.
Okay. All right. Any discussion? And then we can vote. Gary?
Yeah, when I look at the operating budget, which we're gonna get to next, on page 11, we had $533,000 in capital unallocated reserves in 2017. We currently have, after 2019, $975,000. So we've raised that almost by over $400,000. We've almost doubled the capital. So there is money there if we need it. I just don't think that this project is a big priority for me right now because we have many other things to deal with. So I would be voting against your motion.
Okay, excellent. All in favor of my motion? All opposed? Okay, there you go. Moving on. Sidewalk improvements, coming from the BMGTF. 75,000.
I'll give you a positive motion.
Positive motion from Waring.
You beat me to it.
Excellent. 75,000. Would you like to speak to it as the motion maker?
Yeah, this is directly as a result of the pedestrian safety task force, which met and recommended this about 4 or 5 years ago. It's been a long time coming. I'm finally happy to see it.
Excellent. Mr. Rapp?
I can speak to the sidewalk improvements made on Sunset recently. It's certainly added to that street because I walk it quite a bit. That said, you might want to look at other possibilities for funding. Corinne, Ms. Milton, that's a possibility, but I agree with the motion.
Okay. Grants, Wilkie?
Yeah, just adding to what John said, my understanding on these is that they are the north-south connections through the old part of town, and that's, in my mind, critical pathways for school kids, and so I do think there's value in doing it, so I support this.
Okay, we'll go Gordon and Cindy.
I have a quick question regarding the sidewalks that are either on Edward or Frontenac, near the school. Is there any way, and I could be way off, the Foothill School Division, are they responsible for that or just the upkeep?
They're responsible for upkeep. That's it.
Yeah, we looked into that when we did the study.
Holiday.
I'm actually not in favor of this. It's 75,000 this year and for the next 3 years. We've got major infrastructure projects that these places have not had sidewalks there for 40 years. So if it's so critical, why is it taking 40 years? Kids are using Hubert, that's already done to the south. They come down Sunset, so we have most of the kids coming from up on Sunset Hill and over in McLeod Meadows, and they cross over and walk down Sunset, and then they go down Hubert, right to Royal. These ones are not going to be used by school kids that already have their path. It's a nice to have. I don't think it's essential, because it hasn't been essential for 40 years. And I think that we have other things that are more of a priority, so I'll be voting against.
Okay, thank you. Hamilton, Rath? Okay, oh, Hamilton.
I think that this entire capital budget, we really need to look at nice to haves versus, do we really need it? I look at these projects, you know, we've got this one glaring project of Sunset and clay pipe, and honestly, everything else for me is kind of just gonna have to wait. I don't think that increasing property taxes 4 to 6% is gonna be an option for us. So any of these that I think that are kind of nice to have, I'll be voting against, and I think that the sidewalk improvements are one of them, unfortunately, for this year.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Gordon, and then we'll call the vote.
Yeah, I have a question before I say I'm for or against it, to be quite honest with you, towards administration. These aren't just the sidewalks that are 40+ years old. I know last year some were done over on Edward and Country Meadows area because of the deterioration. And I have a concern, do we have a way that we rate these for immediate replacement, or do we have a time frame involved ahead? Because I have a concern regarding the town's liability. When they're in a decrepit state, people are out walking, we have a responsibility from a liability, duty of care responsibility, that if the duty of care is not provided, somebody gets injured, town potentially is on the hook. So we have to consider that. So I'd like to know, out of this 75,000, how much really is earmarked for urgent, immediate repair, or is it a want to? Because it's a want to versus a have to versus a need to.
Mr. Irvine?
I can answer that question. So the $75,000 is a capital request to install new non-existing sidewalk for the safe pedestrian pathway for children crossing from one part of the community to the other. Operating budget addresses repairs to sidewalks, such as the repairs you saw probably last year in your own neighborhood. Those repairs are determined through a process of inspections. We have a document that we use to inspect. Every spring we walk around our community, we inspect the sidewalk, and they have a 1 through 5 rating, and we prioritize those portions of sidewalk for liability reasons, as well as just making sure that our sidewalks are intact for the long term.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Clarification.
That closes the debate. All in favor of the 75,000 for sidewalk improvements? And that's carried. All opposed? There we go. Perfect, thank you. Dunham Lane sanitary upgrade. I will make the motion that we allocate $60,000 to the Dunham Lane sanitary upgrade from the 8-inch to the 10-inch pipe. And speaking to the motion, this is a necessity for development of the 11 lots for capacity reasons. If not, things won't run downhill so smoothly. Any other comments? Councillor Hamilton?
I think for this sanitary upgrade, it's also important to note that if we do it now, there's substantial savings to the town.
So
I will be voting in support of this one.
excellent, thank you.
Nice.
Okay, and that closes debate. All in favor? That's carried, unanimous, thank you. Sunset Boulevard West, Blacklock Way to Main Street sanitary and road upgrade. MSI grant funding, $300,000. Wilkie?
I'll make that motion and speak in favor of it as well. I mean, we saw the condition, last meeting. This is gonna need to be done. In my mind, this is one of the required services that a municipality provides to its residents. There are holes in this. It is well past due. We need to undertake the work to get this done. I support this motion.
Okay, discussion? Deputy Mayor Haldane?
I understand it's clay pipe, it needs to be replaced. I have concerns in the fact that we have a major business hoping to expand. The timing's gonna suck. It's election year, not that we should care about that, but we're gonna rip up Sunset at the same time. We've got a major business trying to get going, hopefully. And we haven't gotten a second opinion on this. We've got some nice video. We're not the first municipality out there to ever have a project like this. To spend $300,000 to investigate it just seems funny to me, when municipalities all over the province are doing this every single day. There's gotta be somebody in an engineering department at Okotoks or High River somewhere that knows better how we can time this to not mess up our businesses. I'm really worried about that first block. I don't know, there's something that's not sitting right with this on me on timing. And the fact it's a $4 million project and we've got MPs saying it needs to be done. They said that 2 years ago. It's still not sitting well with me.
MP didn't say that, Andy said that.
Well, whoever said that, if I got diagnosed with cancer, I'd hope I'd get a second opinion. This is a huge project. It's everything that, sorry, I shouldn't say it that way, but I would like to hear a little bit more on it. It's a second opinion that I think, just because of how it got handled on the right after the election, that there's got to be a better way about this than taking a whole year to be planning this, and then it's going to get thrown in, 2 years from now. I'm worried about the expansion in Eau Claire, what this is going to do, ripping up that. I know everybody's sold on it, but I would have liked a better second opinion.
Yep, I got Waring and then I got Gordon.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I looked through the 300,000 design cost breakdown that we got today, and I would like to hope, looking at that there is a little bit of fat built in there, and that could be reduced as far as I could see. With respect to the pipe itself, I believe that it's necessary to do it. If we do it, we're not going to be doing it before the end of 2020 or into 2021, so that's another year and a half from now. The condition with sewer pipelines is when they're letting water in, the water goes to the sewer station, it gets treated, it costs us money, it costs us chemicals, it costs us a lot more than if it wasn't going there. And I didn't see any reason at all on the explanation we had the other week why we shouldn't proceed with this project. As to Mr. Eau Claire, his development is not on Sunset. His development is in the field behind Sunset, and other than tying in at some time in the future, I can see it having no impact on his operations.
Thank you. I got Gordon and Lucky.
Yeah, one question I have, and just to clarify, because I understand Cindy's concerns here, definitely having a second opinion I think would be valid, but that's my understanding what this $300,000 is for, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is to get that second opinion, to get the updated opinion from 2017. A different set of eyes on it might be good, not just an MPE eye. I don't know if that is something we'll have to put out for tender, or do we just accept MPE? That might be something that we have to consider. It might be wise to have not just a second opinion, but a different set of eyes on it. It's just something to consider.
Thank you. Wilkie, then, Todd, you wanna have a,
Go ahead.
Wilkie?
Yeah, I too am concerned about impact on businesses. My view is that this will need to be done. And it's going to need to be done in the near term. That's my view on it. So I think part of what we're spending money on here is a work plan and a schedule, and I think that part of that scheduling should include, working with the businesses to understand what can work the most effectively. But, you know, reality is, I don't think we can get around this. So, do we want it to happen now, or do we want it to happen 4 years when the business is twice as big and it's twice as disruptive? You know, it's a challenge for me to say, let's put it off because it's gonna be an inconvenience when we're gonna have to take this pill at some point, I think, right? So I would like to see work being done with the businesses to ensure that we're minimizing that disruption and that there is access to all of the businesses, but I do struggle with that as a reason to defer, I think.
Thank you. I'm gonna go to Councillor Holiday.
Yeah, and I have no problems that it needs to be done. It's just the year or so investigating more that we know, like, we're gonna investigate farther up, which we already know the pipe farther down is terrible, so to spend a bunch of money when we know it's the same pipe going on the whole street, that to me kinda takes me off. And just, because we're not the only, this is not a new or any weird project. This is something that municipalities do every day. So I don't know who, one of our friend municipalities we could talk to, what their experiences are, and to get this thing quicker. I'm just worried that we're investigating this thing to death, and pushing off timelines that are really gonna mess up businesses later on. That it's a lot of money, and to take so long, I guess, is my problem. I would have liked to see a quicker timeline on it, and less money, obviously, on investigating it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rabb, and then if Councillor Hamilton has no comment, we will call a question.
I have a couple things to comment on. Someplace I thought I saw a cost breakdown of 300,000. I thought I just saw it recently, and I just can't find it right now. But it's on there?
Yeah, 70,000 to
Yeah, okay, I'll look at it later. I just saw the cost. It has been broken down. I'm still troubled by the cost. I think $300,000 before you put a shovel in the ground seems cost prohibitive to me. I don't understand why. I mean, how much to take to say you have to replace the sewer line? Well, then replace it, you know, and map it out, and you know, I mean, there's engineering. I don't know, that $300,000 seems crazy to me. That said, I'm also on West End, and Mr. Waring and I are both on West End, and we know that we've had a serious increase in our level of sewage contribution. Now, we're not sure that's a meter. It could be. We had that discussion in council. You've heard it before. Or is it infiltration? And when I see the looks of that pipe from that engineering we had in last time, there certainly could be infiltration problems, which, as Mr. Waring says, increases our level of our contribution to total sewage, which increases our amount of dioxide we have to put in, which increases our costs, and it just goes on and on and on. So I'm still in favor of this. $300,000 is still hard for me to take.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Sharp.
Thank you. I wanted to make answer a few questions or general comments that I've heard in no particular order. The plan for 2020 is spelled out in the document we sent for you. The reason it's taking so long is that not that it will take the entire year, although it will take the majority of the year, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's $300,000 worth of work that needs to be done in the form of detailed estimates and design, making sure we're clear, as Councillor Deputy Mayor Holliday said, making sure we're rock solid, that it actually does need to be done, and we're already confident it does need to be done. Sequencing with Alberta Transportation, sequencing with businesses, sequencing with the construction season, the time it takes to build. This is not a small project. We're not tendering a lift station and getting it out. This is a huge project that needs to be done and tendered. And it needs to be done in the early months of the winter so that we can capitalize on the construction season in 2021. So that's what 2020 is for, to make sure we do it properly. We do work with all our partners and all our stakeholders and all our businesses, and dot our I's and cross our T's, and furthermore, get you proper cost estimates on what it will cost. It may not cost 300. We're thinking it will, but it will cost what it will cost, because we're going to tender the extra subject matter expertise that we need to bring in-house for this contract out, and it will cost what it costs. If it costs less than 300, you have a credit. If it costs more than 300 because we underestimated, then we'll come back to you and let you know, and we'll talk about how we're going to fund that.
Beg forgiveness, right?
As far as the second opinion goes, with all due respect, MP, we've been well served by MP for more than 20 years, and while that report is from 2016, we now have an in-house engineer who's also validated the results and the work that's been done on that, and he concurs that the work needs to be done. However, if you'd like to go get a third-party estimate done on the work, we can pay for that, pay tens of thousands of dollars for that, if that's what council wishes to do. As far as the implications to the businesses, I can't deny that. That's something that municipalities go through all across North America, across the world, the implications of infrastructure projects on the effects on the businesses. And so we, like every municipality, will work with those businesses to try to mitigate that. Now, we're lucky enough that we are in a small town that we can probably have some effect on that, but that's part of the plan. Part of the plan in 2020 is to figure out how we're going to support and mitigate those effects.
Excellent. Councillor Hamilton.
This is a project I am in support of. I think it's not something that's going to go away, but speaking of our in-house engineer, what role is he going to play in this $300,000 and the project as a whole?
Mr. Sharp.
So we estimate that he'll be able to handle about half of, this is a big project, so the detailed design and all those sorts of things, he won't be able to do. It's too big, and we like to pass that liability on to outside firms as well too on projects this size. But Richard will be heavily involved in this. As far as the percentage goes, it'll be anywhere from 5 to 10% of that project. Now, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the number we spoke of last time.
Yeah, it'd probably be more on the 5% side because of the expertise required in the liability.
Yeah. So about 5% of that 300,000 will be absorbed by the work that he's doing.
Thank you. Last comment is Wilkie.
Well, one thing I did want to also mention is just this $300,000 in my mind is a portion of the actual project, right? Like if you look at what's included in that breakdown, a significant portion of that is detailed design and drawings, right? Which are going to have to get done. That needs to get done on a project of this scale. There's things like work planning. There's construction cost estimate. Your traffic detour phasing. Like this is all stuff that we're gonna have to do. So in my mind, there may be some amount of double counting between the 300,000 and the $4.1 million, and that's sort of how I'm viewing this. Is we're doing the first part of the work. This is the start of the project. But that's my view on it. So.
Okay. Thank you, and that closes the debate. We all know the conditions, we all have our opinions. All in favor of the motion? All opposed? And that's carried. Gooding Lane, Edgar to Sunset, storm, sewer, and road upgrade. Reserve off-site levy is our funding model, $460,000. Gordon?
Sure, it's my time. So this is the Gooding Lane right in behind, running north-south between Sunset and, is that Kennedy?
No,
then?
Edgar.
Edgar. So,
It says right there.
yeah, there we go. I'm tired, it's been a long day. So I make the motion that we add this to our capital budget at the amount of $460,000, the Gooding Lane storm sewer and road upgrade.
Excellent, thank you.
I need to speak to it.
You can speak to it as a motion maker, yes.
Yeah.
1 second rest, there you go.
So I will actually speak to this in support of this. I think it's a great idea, looking ahead to the services provided along this road and the commercial land that is there. I think we can, as it's mentioned here, that we are gonna be able to recover some of this from an off-site levy perspective. I think from an municipal development, economic development perspective, I think it's a good win-win.
Councilor Rapp.
My question is, if we talk about doing Sunset, let's assume that gets approved next year and we do Sunset. It's probably important to have this Gooding Lane done, because at least they can start it back and get into the glass shop, for example, and like that would be handy to have that, and I'm sure to have this done. My question would be, however, if we finish this up and we put it into a, excuse the expression, a crappy line, which is what that current line than at bottom end of Sunset is, are we gonna create more problems? In other words, could we have a problem with that connection prior to putting a new proper line in on Sunset? Like, I would sooner do it the other way around personally, because for me, from a sewer and water point of view, I would think that it makes sense to put the main line in and then plug into it, as opposed to putting a brand new line and running it into some previous existing pretty sketchy sewer. That would be my concern. I'm asking it more as a question than as a comment. Mr. Mike?
Yeah, our initial take on this was to do Sunset and Gooding at the same time.
Yes.
When we initially were talking, we were saying, can we do this in 2020? The Sunset's a massive project, as it was alluded to before. A lot of prep work needs to go into it, and the advanced work will also help in cost savings if we get the tenders out early. Also, we talked about the disruption to businesses along Main Street, along the Sunset. If we were to do Gooding and Sunset at the same time, that could be pretty problematic, because we want to maybe use part of Gooding as part of our transportation rerouting to get movement, not only for the commercial and the businesses in Sunset, a lot of residential homes are affected by this as well.
Yes.
So having Gooding, yes, optimum would be perfect to do it both at the same time. But there's no harm in having Gooding done first, and then do the tie-in at Sunset for now, and then when Sunset comes down, we have to do all the tie-ins to all the existing businesses in that area. We do either do the replacement and make sure the fitting is done right. In the meantime, we can do an interim and still make that storm system tie-in to existing. At this point, it's too preliminary to see if putting in that storm is gonna burden the system. I think that's the least of our problems with getting Sunset upgraded at this point.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
So Gooding Lane is essentially an alley behind the Main Street frontage.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if this too is just something that is, you know, nice to have, versus something that's required out of necessity. Yeah, I don't know, $500,000 is a lot of money for some storm sewer and paving of an alleyway, so I'm really having a hard time with this one, and I think I almost need more information.
Well,
I echo Councillor Hamilton, and I guess as a question, if we don't do this and those empty lots do develop, my understanding is that right now they would need to go across Main Street to tie into existing service. Is that correct? So that is something that they could do at this time.
Through the mayor, two options available to any of those vacant lots on Main Street developing. One is to, yes, tie into the existing storm system, which is on the other side of Main Street by the gazebo. That's all, to give you a sense how far over it is. The other option is to put the storm system in Gooding and have them pay for it all. And keep in mind, if the cost is, I think we're 60 give or take, and their portion represents only about 45%, someone's gonna front end all that cost. So that could be pretty cost prohibitive. They will need to deal with their stormwater on their site some way or another. There's, I think, a third option, you can try to contain it on site, but there's a bunch of implications and cost involved in that, and whether it's roof or tanks and what have you. So I mean, there are, I guess, three options. One is to go out to Main Street, tie into a system that is aging and close to being at capacity, so we'll be visiting that in years to come as well. Or putting one into Gooding, which is probably the most effective and probably the most appropriate because it benefits everybody with less disruption. Keep in mind, putting anything across Main involves AT and potential shutdowns on Main Street we'd love to avoid, hence Gooding Lane. As for the comment, if I may, on Gooding Lane, our lanes aren't given names, but in case of Gooding Lane, they've given it a name. Part of Gooding Lane functions as a road. And it pertains, it's very specific because it just really functions as a road more so for that blue Quonset that's there. But it does, although it's not, doesn't meet our specs on size and everything, it is functioning as a road portion of it. So just to give you some sense of, it's a hybrid of a lane if you want to call it that, but it's not just a lane.
access to businesses, that's for sure.
I have one more question.
Yep, Councillor Hamilton, follow up.
Just a quick follow-up to that, where the existing businesses that are on, the back onto Gooding Lane, where is their storm sewer currently going? Is it tying in across?
Through the mayor, are we referring to the businesses on Main Street or the blue Quonset that fronts on
The
the
ones on Main Street,
building?
beside the empty lots.
Let's say I believe Rob Bank, in the case of Storm, I think is draining right onto Main Street, if I'm not mistaken, because we were looking at the undeveloped site and how they were gonna address matters. But just because that's how it has been, doesn't mean that's the appropriate way to handle it. We can't just take stormwater and flush it all onto Main Street. If it's already burdened or it's not tied in, you're gonna create other issues at the four corners. So everything is basically on Main Street, it's traveling south. And then when it hits the four corners, it's slowly making its way out to the river heading east. So maybe in the past we've done stormwater management a little differently than we do now. But typically the requirements, city category requirements, are to handle stormwater on your site or tie into an existing storm system if one's available. If one isn't, either upgrade or deal with it on site, which is two of the options I spoke to earlier. So.
I have Waring and then I have a question.
So the stone will be a separate line, not tied into the sewer lines, that's will be a separate stone line that we're talking about here?
Through the mayor, that's correct. Gooding Lane is part sanitary upgrade, part storm upgrade. They're not together, they're separate systems. Good. Thank you. My question, Ms. Middleton, number one, Dunham Lane paving, one of our funding models was the federal gas tax. With that being removed now from the budget, what was the number of that funding model, and could that now transfer down to Gooding Lane because we don't have any grant monies identified there? Could that not lessen the burden, and if so, do you have a number for us?
I'd have to look into my binder, because I do have that number, but yes, absolutely, if you wanted to move that funding source down into a different, capital project, we certainly could.
Could you look for that number, and I'm gonna move on to the next one, and then when you have it, we'll come back to it.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so guys, you understand what I'm saying? Just gonna let her do some math. Royal Light Lift Station, SCADA Systems Lighting and Fencing, MSI, 90,000. Or sorry, 110, now adjust that.
125.
We have
What
a
do we
motion,
got?
we have a motion on the table though, right? Before we can move on.
We're just gonna go into, just to talk. Oh yeah, we can't make a motion. Go ahead, Todd.
Could I suggest we just take a 5-minute recess?
Sure.
Give Corinne a chance to
Yeah,
look that
absolutely.
up.
Everyone good with that? Councilor Rab, 5-minute recess. Perfect. All in favor? Want me to make it? You did. Yeah, that's a better idea, Todd. Thanks.
Now don't get your riding numbers mixed up with your budget numbers.
Okay, we're gonna come back in here. 9:31. Reconvening. Councilor Gordon, all in favor?
Reconvene, make that motion? Oh, you can make it.
Excellent. What did we discover, Ms. Miller?
So through the mayor, we have 420,000, just over 420,000 in federal gas tax money that can be applied.
Out of the possible 460.
What was it?
420,000 can come from a grant. How's that? That's pretty good.
Is that great?
Go ahead.
Wow.
But
That's a lot.
that grant can also be used for other things, right?
Yep.
So it's not really free money, just
Oh,
for this
it's not
project.
free money. It's all taxpayer money.
Like $4 million something.
Yeah. Okay, so, we do have, federal gas tax money that can be allocated to this, we don't have to use it all. Who made the motion?
I did.
Okay, so, conversation, now's the time. Deputy Mayor Holiday.
My holding point on this project is whether or not those two lots can be developed or not, if we do or do not go with this project. And those businesses along revitalizing our downtown. So I'm on the fence on this one.
Okay. Anybody else? I'm gonna call the vote, so motions made by Councilor Gordon in favor of the 460. Before we do that, do you need direction for the grant, or can that come back at some other time?
Well, you can give us direction, but I think administration has found the balance of where we can place the money, the grants we can use, and the different sources.
Perfect. That's all I wanna know, just in case.
But if
Yep, go ahead.
But if council specifically wants us to divert the gas tax funding from Dunham Lane to that, we could do that in a separate motion. Or an amendment to, Councillor Gordon's motion dictating what the funding source should be.
Yeah, well, we didn't dictate where the funding was coming from, other than what's written here. So, what I'm saying is there leeway where you guys can come back to us and say, yeah, we're gonna use 200 grand. You don't need to set that much motion, we know what we're doing, or do you want the direction for the monies, because there might be something else that you guys want federal gas tax money for. And we are not finished the list yet either, so. Correct?
That's me.
So through the mayor, to address the mayor's question, we can move this money if we choose to put a portion or we want to put all of it. That money is available and we have it. So how we want to allocate it, if we're not going to do the Dunham Lane paving project and we want to allocate the 420,000, then the remainder comes for offsite levy, or if we choose to do it another way. But we can put that money there.
Okay.
Just administration just needs direction.
Okay, perfect. Brad?
So this is one block, only storm, sewer, and road, correct? What about the sewer in that back alley? There is none? It's on
There
Main?
will be.
It says, all it says here, Edgar to Sunset, storm, sewer, and road upgrade.
That's all that. Go ahead, Mr. Mulligan.
Through the mayor, I guess there's sort of two blocks, if you will. There's Windsor in between all that.
Yeah.
So the sanitary is on the north portion between Windsor and Edgar, and the stormwater is basically from Windsor down to Sunset. So they're kind of split. The only thing that goes across the whole distance is upgrading of the road as a result of digging it up. Does that help answer?
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, it goes right from Coyote Moons Road all the way down.
Through the back alley.
Yeah, the whole alley.
And where, is there no sewer on Main Street at all, or is it?
It's across the road, so he doesn't dig up the highway. Councillor Hamilton, and then I think Waring, and we should be good.
Just one quick question, the lots that are currently vacant and for sale, if we do not put the storm sewer in, they have to, which would be probably too much of a expense, so would make development on those lots probably slim to none. Is that what I'm
Very
understanding to
Very
be
much so.
correct?
It's an extra barrier.
Waring?
When we're talking about funding, I see on Sunset 300,000 as a debenture. So if we could take that 420,000 and use it, part of it instead of the debenture on Sunset, and put the rest of it against Gooding, and that will save us some money being passed back onto the ratepayers with the property taxes.
Thank you. It says MSI grant on my sheet, but
It says debenture, grant and off-site levy.
So through the mayor.
yeah, that's not
The
very.
original funding, there's some confusion, so the
Ah.
original funding's, plan for Sunset in its entirety was a combination of, debenture, grant, and offsite levy. The amount that we're using for 300 is just MSI, grant.
Okay,
Yeah.
that
Okay.
doesn't say in the
Yeah.
document we got tonight for council.
Okay, we're good.
Ignore me.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to support for 460,000, and we can let the grants speak for themselves as we move on. All in favor? And we have a carry. Thank you. Royal Light Lift Station SCADA System Lighting Fencing, MSI grant. Can we confirm the number is 110, Mr. Lanka? Not 90,000?
125. For Royal Light?
125? No, this is, Royal Light, sorry, yes.
For Royal Light, Mr. Chair, it's 125, correct?
125, okay, thank you. $125,000 for SCADA upgrade. Mr. Welke?
Unless anybody wants to speak in favor, I will give you a motion to approve, Royal Light Lift Station upgrades, and then speak against it, if that's fine. This, very much feels like a nice to have. I do recognize that we wanna get everything there eventually. This list is very long, and this one falls to the bottom of it for me. I will not be supporting it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rapp?
Yeah, like I'm kind of the same as Councillor Wilkie. Is it possible to approve one and not the other? Like, is it possible to do it over a couple of years?
We can do one.
If we think it's important at all, that maybe you don't, and maybe I don't, but that's also the way of doing it, as opposed to do them both this year for 200,000, maybe do one and do another one next year, like, I don't know. Is it a big fire? Like, for me, that's awesome.
Thank you, Councillor Waring.
Yeah, you beat me to it. I have the same idea to split it over 2 years, but I wonder if one of them is more urgent than the other one, because I did notice there was some repairs to be done to one of them. So maybe we have to consider if there is any urgency about those repairs.
Okay, thank you.
What's the monkey movie?
No, I'd say they're both the same age, but I'm just,
No, in the,
One
I'm
needs
just
more work
guessing.
though.
in the
Any,
estimate.
any information on that, Mr. Malik?
Mr. Mayor, I just wanna check an email if I could for a second.
Sure. Meanwhile, I'll speak for the motion. It's MSI grants. Again, there's efficiencies to be had. Maybe they're minimal, but over the long term, it gives us preventative maintenance that I believe is important. Flooding, backlogs, blockages. This allows that system to tell us in real time that these things are happening, and that can save people's basements and so on and so forth, and sewage backups. And so, for me, it's MSI grant funding. We have to keep moving forward on infrastructure, and so I would totally support this. Mr. Blanket?
Yeah, and answer to the question, is one more higher a priority than the other? Essentially, no. I mean, one is at a different level, so there's different upgrades required versus the other. But I've been given no indication from MP or in the infrastructure management plan from 215 that one is in dire need versus the other. I treat them as equal. If you're gonna put one forward over the other, I'll leave it for council to decide which you think.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, I think that's good. Deputy Mayor Holday?
The one thing we didn't address is how often these have to be updated. Like, I'm looking at our water distribution side, we have our SCADA systems needing to be rebuilt next year for 2021. How often, so we invest this money into SCADA this year, how long is that good for, and when does it have to get replaced and rebuilt anyways? Again, how long do they last?
Through the mayor, yeah, through the mayor, we didn't do a life cycle analysis or a lifespan analysis on the SCADA system. Initially, it's the putting in the tower and all the electronics. Electronics may change over time, so that may be the case, but I mean, SCADA's been around for quite some time, from my understanding, doing my research. So it's a pretty robust system, but I couldn't give you an idea of how many years we're coming back to replace this. Any of our existing systems, it's not on our IMP to renew any of those or upgrade them, so they're operating.
It's on here for 2021.
For which system?
Rebuild valve SCADA. Oh, maybe it's rebuild only in the valve, not rebuilding SCADA on the water.
Which facility are we
Chlorine
at
building
talking?
and the PRV in the West End building.
In the West End building.
Yeah,
Is
that's,
that a redoing
So
of the
through
SCADA,
the-
or is that a new SCADA?
through the mayor, what that's gonna be is West End has that facility, we also have equipment in that facility, so it'll be coordination between the two of us. And we'll be figuring out how best to communicate, whether we're using SCADA or another system.
So that's
again,
not rebuilding.
it may be updating equipment so we can communicate the same way, but I don't have that in front of me exactly, so I couldn't give the specifics, so. Again, we had that on the radar for, I think, 2021, did we not?
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna go to Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, and some pick up on here from what the mayor had mentioned, that this funding model for this proposes MSI. We can carry the MSI over to next year as well, when we could then put this towards our sunset. And I would prefer to do that personally. It's MSI funding, but we've got a massive project that's coming. My opinion on both of the SCADA systems would have to be consistent, and I think that money should be held in reserves until we get sunset done.
All right, good stuff. All in favor of the motion?
What's the motion?
I'm not done yet.
You
The
sure?
motion is to fund.
I don't see your light. There you go. Go ahead.
Yeah, I really am not anxious to spend a bunch of money on SCADA. Before I would be prepared, I could put this on hold until I heard from an operator. What's it cost us to have operators come in and check it every once in a while? Like I just gave you, if we spent $400 a week At 52 weeks, that's only $20,000 for the whole year. And that's, $400 should cover it, that's fairly good, I think. So I'd like to hear from an operator. I assume the operator may very well be a Black Diamond. I'm not sure, Mr. Sharp, but if he is, he may have to come over. I don't know how many times he comes, it's for regular maintenance, whatever. I'd be curious to know before I was willing to spend $125,000 on a piece of monitoring equipment, that's all it is. I'd like to know what it's gonna cost us in the meantime.
Okay, excellent. Who made the motion is right. Mr. Wilkie did, to support for 125, Gil will be voting against. All in favor of the motion? All opposed? And that's defeated. Is there a secondary motion you would like to make, Mr. Rapp? Referring to information, Dr. Mayor Halday.
Yeah, I just had a concern about the chain link fencing on the Royalite as a separate thing. Do we have infrastructure there that needs the chain link for security purposes or vandalism, whatever? Is that a necessity? We've beat the SCADA to death, but I just want to double check on the chain link fencing for 5,000 on the Royalite, whether that's a necessity for
Safety purposes.
safety and security.
Sure. Mr. Malika?
So through the mayor, my understanding is, conversing with Craig Beaton, is that there's nothing on the exterior that is of any significant concern with regards to security. Our PVRs, in some cases, and our lift stations, we've been enclosing just to make sure that they're free of vandalism, if you will. I think the cost here on the Royal Light is $5,500 to put a chain link. It's consistent with some of our other lift stations, but from my understanding, if the lift station, fencing was taken off, I don't think we're gonna have a concern. It sounds like most of it's enclosed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've got 15 minutes to finish up through here. We can extend the meeting after 10 if we wish, but I am gonna tell you right now, we won't be making it to the operations. I will definitely be sending us home before that. The last two things I wanna finish is this detailed list and the regional waste management master plan. Then we can accept correspondence, and we're going to defer the rest to the next meeting or postpone. Okay. With that being said, as we move through here, if you know how you're voting, state it. A quick synopsis of why, and let us move down the table so we can get through the list faster. Councilor Rapp.
Mr. Mayor, did you want me to make a resolution that we ask a maintenance guy to come in to talk to us? Is that what you want for a motion? For the secondary motion, or is it sufficient to say what we've said, that you could?
We can leave it for now. We're gonna be.
Mr. Sharp, what do you think? Do you need that as a motion or resolution from council?
So, the item was voted down.
Yes.
So we leave it at that. If you'd like to resurrect it and bring more
fair enough.
information back, we can.
Thank you. Yeah, good.
Thanks, Doc. Okay, sewer and storm infiltration investigation, MSI 25,000.
I'll give you that.
Waring gives me 25,000, do I have 30? I mean, thank you, sir, thank you. Motion's on the table, sewer,
Speak to it.
yes, sir.
As previously mentioned, any problems in sewer lines, either leaking or taking in water, ends up in us paying much higher bills to West End. So I feel to spend some money to check that everything could work in order is going to save us money in the long run.
Discussion? Councillor Hampton?
Just quickly, this is this year's, the 2020 amount, right? Like, it's a total of 75,000 required for this investigation, and this is a third of the, okay.
We're only paying for this year.
But it'll require commitment on other count in previous year, or subsequent years in order to.
We can review the results of what they do this year when we decide for next year.
Mr. Malika can answer that.
So through the mayor, yeah, we've suggested defer this over a couple of years, and we'll deal with different parts of the town in each year. One isn't dependent on the other.
Okay, great.
We'll start with the area where we think we could probably see the most benefit, and then work our way past the other areas. So I mean, if we did it this year and then we did next year, I'm not too concerned, as long as we're making progress and trying to investigate the system.
Excellent, thank you. Deputy Mayor Halday?
Yeah, I guess that was my concern, like, to spend money testing new sewer systems in town doesn't sound like a good idea, but if we could prioritize, definitely, so that yeah, I guess that goes without saying, so that we can maybe spend less than 75,000 and skip parts of town that are new, that would be great.
I understand what you're saying. Okay, excellent, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. Water line pressure testing, 30,000, MSI grant. Councillor Rabb, stop winking and speak.
I'd love to make that motion.
Thank you.
We accept the $30,000 for water line pressure testing.
Excellent. Okay, motion's on the table, would you like to speak to that as the maker?
Sounds good to me.
I love it. Waring?
Yeah, could we just have a little bit of an explanation on what you're testing, where you're testing? I did hear that we were looking at numbers from water supplied from the plant versus water that's used in the town to see if there's any differences. And, you know, will this be part of this exercise?
I'll take that through the mayor. So this is really just a loss prevention. We have a system that's older in some areas than others, and we know that there's minor leaks out there based on the water that's being pushed out from the water treatment plant to the water that's being billed for. So the water pressure testing, what it allows us to do is isolate neighborhoods, sections of the water system, pressure it up, find out volume of loss in pressure, and determine the size and or volume of leak in those said areas, allowing us to identify or further investigate if there's a bigger concern around water loss. Not all water surfaces when there's a leak. Sometimes it follows the lines, it infiltrates into storm systems because there's leaks in the system, and then makes its way back into the sewer system, where we're paying for it in another form, or it just dissipates into the ground. So this is a way to find and ensure that our system is top notch or in healthy situation.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Holiday?
Yeah, the sewer I was in favor of definitely because we know that we have major leaks in sewer. Black Diamond, when they had troubles with their leaky water pipes, it was obvious in their numbers. Looking at our numbers from Shrek, we're not losing massive amounts of water. This to me is a nice to have. I'd rather do the sewer for the next couple of years and then do the water later, rather than spend the money on it now. I know it's only 30,000, but every dollar counts, and I don't see, just looking at the Shrek numbers, evidence of massive amounts of water loss that we'd be making this up in. I don't think there'd be any harm in waiting a couple of years, 3 years, but that's my 2 cents.
Okay, Warren?
Shrek numbers do not tell you the amount of water you're losing. It only tells you the amount of water they're sending out of their system into Turner Valley. The only way you can check whether we're losing water in Turner Valley is by adding up the amount of water that's billed to all the different residences and businesses over a period of time and compare it with the amount of water that's been delivered to us. And if there's a difference, and I understand there is, therefore we have leaks. So I'm very much in favour of this, because everybody complains of the cost of water, so if we can reduce the amount we're losing, the cost of water comes down.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Holiday?
Yeah, I just took the treated amount that we're buying from Shrek and divided it by how many residents and purchasers we have, and it didn't seem to be obscene amounts of water use. So it was definitely basic rudimentary math, but that's how I determined that. You know, in July it was 17 cubic meters per household, and that's a watering lawn month.
I use 10, so where did the other 7 go?
So yeah, but another family would use bigger. So it just seemed to me that we wouldn't be finding much, and nor do we have money to fix lots of leaky pipes that we find. It could wait a few years. That's all.
Okay. Any further discussion? No. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. We have it carried. All opposed? There you go. Okay. Bailey Lift Station.
I'll give you the motion and I'll speak against it.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson.
I'll give you the motion to add $90,000, actually is it 110?
110.
For the Baylor lift station, SCADA system and fencing. Again, nice to have, we've talked about it to death, but I also think that for next year, for clarity, SCADA, we said we weren't using it for automation, so then it's not for preventative maintenance, it's just an alarm, a very fancy one, but an alarm. So I think that I would just, think it's something that we can definitely upgrade down the road.
Was that a dig in my rib there, Len?
No, we said it was preventative maintenance, but then we said that we weren't gonna automate it, so if we're not automating it, if we're not paying for the automation, then it's an alarm.
I hear you. Okay, insert same discussion from Royalite. Do I need to have any discussion here? All in favor of the motion? And all opposed? And there you have it. That is denied. Okay, thank you. Number 10, Parks and Rec Planning, Playgrounds, Pathways, Parks, Reserves, 200,000. Deputy Mayor Holiday.
I'd like to make a motion for $100,000.
And speak the motion as the motion maker, please.
I think we do have some interest from the public on Parks and Rec. We do need to make some commitment to them, otherwise there's no point having a committee, but I think 100,000 a year was what we'd always talked about, and not 200. I know it was for 1 year, but I'm more comfortable at the $100,000 level as a max.
Okay. And we have Wilkie.
I think the reason for the 200,000 was just that we made no commitment in this past year, and that was the idea behind the $200,000. That said, you know, what I want to see out of this, and I think it was from public engagement, is an ongoing commitment to some of those investments, and obviously viewed on a case by case basis. But I think I want to get something in the budget. So, you know, I would support $100,000. I think I'm comfortable at that level as well.
Councillor Hamilton, and then Gordon.
I think what makes this one difficult is that it's not tied to a specific project. It's just, you know, X amount of dollars for parks, and I know that we saw in our presentation tonight that you guys have some very great ideas, and they haven't been prioritized yet, so we don't know which one's happening next, but I would have loved to have seen a specific plan and project coming into this capital project budget. Anyway, the $100,000 motion by Councillor Holiday I can support, and if there is one of the projects that we saw come to the table, we can always make an amendment next year if Parks is ready. So I would definitely support the $100,000, knowing that we did see a presentation this evening and we can anticipate seeing something come forward from the committee.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gordon?
Yeah, just to follow up with what Lana was saying, I completely agree with that. One thing I did that I'm pretty certain we all picked up on it, but when Andre was getting ready to make his presentation regarding our regional, his words were, "I like what you're doing in this town. I could consider moving here after hearing that presentation." So I think we need to be very cognizant of the reality that we need to invest in our river access, in our trails. People like that. It's a good reason to move.
Thank you. Councillor Rogan?
Why does your thing go faster than mine?
Just quick
Who's
on
younger?
I think that I could support setting aside this money for reserves as opposed to, you know, as a specific parks and pathways priorities. I agree, there's no defined project yet, and I'd love to see and revisit what that defined project is to bring out of reserves. So maybe that's the way that we get around it, is that this is funding for parks and pathways reserves, or a transfer to a parks and pathways reserve fund. Does that help satisfy Lana what you, the concern I have with not approving is that we've made this dedication to commit to investment in this, and the problem is that when we get off cycle of budget, it's going to be much more difficult to approve something mid-cycle, if we haven't set aside the funds for it. And I think what we do need to do is make the ongoing commitment, so that's my view on it.
Larry? And then Lana, sorry, she had her light on.
Am I on?
Didn't see you.
Okay, originally the 100,000 came out of the operating budget, it didn't come out of reserves.
That's correct.
So all we're saying now is we're not gonna put any money out of the operating budget into a Parks and Rec reserve. We're just gonna take money out of existing reserves when a project comes up and we feel we should spend the money on it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What they do in Black Diamond, they take the money that they get from the gas company and the electric company and they put that in a reserve for Parks and Rec. And he gets about $30,000 a year from that, and every 2 or 3 years he has a 90,000 or so, and then he does a little project. So while I agree that it's a great idea that we want to keep taxes as low as possible and we don't want to add another $100,000 or $200,000 to the tax base, just taking it out of reserves is also not helping the situation. So I'd like to see some way that we can fund without using all of our reserves. So
Down the road.
this maybe there's another way to get the money without using reserves.
Lana?
I just wanted to read, in response to Councillor Wilkie's comments, what I mean is that we're not seeing like we expect all this backup for all the other projects, like what does this cost, what does that cost, where we see a plan on what the allocated funds are for, and in this case, there isn't a plan, there's no, I know there's going to be, we had a presentation and we saw, approximation, so all I'm saying is that I do wanna stick to our commitment to PPRAC to set aside funds yearly, but $200,000 being a substantial amount of money, like, I'm wondering maybe if we wait to see what the plan looks like, maybe they don't need $200,000 in this first year. We don't know that. We haven't gotten that far yet. So, not to say that it's off the table to reevaluate, make an amendment, take from reserves at that point, but.
We got 30 seconds before 10 o'clock. I'd like to call this vote and then I'd like to extend the meeting if that's cool. Brad?
Yeah, I'm good with $100,000, but for me, I think that this park, Arrowhead Park, I think has got potential for our community. I think, knowing the Parks Board a little bit, I think that they will get their act together. Not to suggest they haven't, but I think they will have a really good plan with Mr. Beaton and the crew by maybe this time next year, or perhaps a little earlier than that. And maybe I'd be amenable to going $200,000 next year. Because for me, I think this might be a 2021 project anyway, as opposed to this coming year, because if we get permission to build that gas plant trail, that's a possibility for this coming year. So is the trail along the berm there. So there's lots of things to do with $100,000, but I'd be willing to move that to another year. And I will give you a motion that we extend this meeting for I don't know how many hours.
We gotta vote first. So, it's 10:40
Can I amend my motion?
seconds.
Friendly amendment?
Friendly amendment, sure. Sorry, Tom. You had it.
I did have it, yeah. Yeah, I'd like to amend it that the money goes into Parks and Pathways reserves, not that they automatically get to spend $100,000 without coming back to council with a plan. I like the idea that councillor, the 100,000, but into a reserve, into a Parks reserve. So we're taking it from one reserve into another, we're just earmarking it, but once we see the final project,
That would be done.
then we can spend it.
Okay. 100,000.
I'd like to object. One of the things, so there's no question that, council, for all the other projects, we present a plan for how the money is spent. We've seen several examples in the last few months of how the money could be spent. It's not uncommon in Parks and Recreation to, because a lot of the Parks and Recreation initiatives are small, right? You're putting park benches in, you're putting amenities along the river for small amounts, you're fixing a bridge, you're doing all those kinds of things. It's really difficult to quantify those types of initiatives into a project per se. We call it just infrastructure repairs or infrastructure improvements. So in some cases it's difficult to quantify that. If council's saying put it into reserves and come back in a few months with the plan to entertain, or, sorry?
No.
If council's saying put it into reserves and come back with the plan, demonstrate the plan in a few months, and then we'll, we'll approve the moving of a cross of $100,000. I just wanted to hear that. Or is this put it in reserves for $100,000 and we'll forget about it, and next year we'll come back and all of a sudden we have more significant money? Just trying to get a little bit of a sense for what council's intent is here.
I think Deputy Mayor Holiday will make that clear.
My intention is that it's not approved for 100,000, so we start doing a bunch of little stuff here and there. I want it to go to an actual project like Arrowhead or a new pathway. Some of the ideas that were presented tonight, not just 100,000 that they can spend little bits here and there all over the place that we never see. I want it. That's why I want it, so they come back and show us exactly how it's going to get spent. Rather than we approved 100,000 and it just disappears throughout the town over the course of the year into little things. I want it earmarked specifically for a bigger project.
I totally understand what you're saying. Okay, 100,000, all in favor? All opposed, none?
And that's into a separate reserve.
Yep. To be contingent upon presentations from Parks and Rec Committee asking for specific allocations. So that makes sense. Okay, now I'll take your motion, Mr. Rath.
I'd like to make a motion that we extend this meeting for as long as it takes to finish the capital, I guess.
Okay. Moving on.
Just the capital?
Capital
and the waste management, we need that, that's gotta be done. Okay, spray park change room upgrade flooring, MSI, 63, no.
All in favor?
Oh,
Yeah, we have to vote and we extend.
Oh, sorry, yes, to extend, all in favor to extend?
Sure.
Sorry.
All against?
Yeah. Bedtime. Spray park change room upgrade, MSI, $6,300. What say you?
Who's doing that?
I'll give you a motion.
Councillor Hamilton says yes to 63. She now speaks to the motion. Here you go.
At this point, I'm not sure if we really require new flooring in the spray park, but it's $6,300. So, do with that what you will. I personally will be voting against the motion.
All right, I'll speak for the motion. Spray park is now 4 years old. The surface that was put in there originally was straight concrete with about a 1-inch grade with drain in the middle, and just straight sealed concrete. So it's solid structure. Some tile would be very nice in there and make it a little more sanitary, because you also have not only the change room, but you have the toilet area, urinals, so on, all coming down to the drain in the middle. So sanitarily wise, it would be a nice thing. Well, just in case, you know.
In the middle.
So I would go yes on this. That's my take. Anybody else, or I can go vote. $6,300. MSI. Todd.
One important piece of the information. This is to improve the slip resistance of the floors.
Safety. There you go. Safety. Okay. All in favor? And that one's passed. Okay. Thank you. Community Transit Program Green Trip Grant TV Share 150K Funding Grant BD Partnership Reserves and Grant. The ask is for $75,000, which is half. Okay.
I'll give you that.
I got Councillor Rabb beat you to it.
Mike?
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we have that, but I'm not sure about the amount, cause I think we just had that, presented to us, and, we really haven't approved that yet, so I'm not sure we can approve a capital, because we really haven't approved the other, so I'm kind of in a quandary here. We had a presentation that was in camera, I think, but it will be public, so, and I don't think the amount of money is exactly the same, so I think we have to put this in a holding pattern personally, until we approve or don't approve of the, transportation agreement.
Malinka? Oh, sorry, Todd, are you just gonna defer?
Just, well, no,
Go ahead.
just before I turn it over to Mr. Malenka, a couple of things. So what we're asking is for the approval of the money, on the condition that council just chooses to go
Okay.
and
Oh,
ahead and
like a
implement the
placeholder?
changes.
Okay.
Placeholder.
Placeholder, yeah.
Okay,
Bit like Parks and Rec.
we'll still have Malinka give us an update.
Not much to add, actually, it was handled perfectly. The only thing is it's up to 75. There's a bunch of options that would be less than that, so we just grabbed the top end,
Yep.
and depending on what council, how they wanna approach it, it could be anything under that.
Okay. You
I
wanna
still,
make-
I made the motion already.
Oh, did?
Yeah.
I thought you just
No,
talked.
no, I made the motion, then I started chatting.
Okay, good stuff. Will,
Sorry, so I just wanna understand how that works, and I guess this is all handled under reserves and grants, so there, you know, the one thing I don't wanna do is approve it, set aside fund, have taxpayers pay that, and then we decide not to proceed with it. This would still require a separate approval and would not come from taxpayer funds until or if that approval is granted by council separately to proceed with the project.
Correct.
okay, perfect. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, any discussion? It's gonna come back to us anyway. All in favor of the motion? And all opposed?
Excuse me, Mayor Crane, I don't think I observed everybody voting on that.
Oh, yeah, all in favor? And all opposed? There we go, that's carried. Okay, flip that page. Thank you for your patience, guys. Fire Department scuba equipment, 2009, 2 years remaining. Capital reserve to fire reserve, 30,000. I'll make the motion to allocate $30,000 from capital reserve to cover scuba equipment. And speaking of the what?
SCBA.
Scuba, it's scuba does.
Scuba.
Scuba's good.
Yeah, scuba.
Yeah, but when you say it, it's just like scuba.
Yeah, same thing. And speaking to the motion, again, we have fantastic firefighters. We wanna give them the best tools possible. This, I believe, this is still part of, this is the last part of the long-term commitment? Is it second year or?
2 years remaining.
2 years.
2 years, maybe,
This
so,
is one more.
okay, so there you go. So, yeah, again, I mean, we have a fantastic crew, and we wanna give them all the tools we can, and, simple as that, so. Waring?
See, it doesn't bloody work.
No, you're, okay, you do have.
I actually went to the fire hall for the open night.
Good for you.
And that nice lady showed me this equipment and let me put it on, and it's bloody heavy. I think the deal was that she explained it that in 2 years from now, which is the third year finished, they have to spend the money on replacing everything. And all they're doing is building up a reserve for that particular point of time. And what it actually will cost and whether we get deals or donations from oil and gas companies or whatever remains to be seen. So I have no problem with this.
Excellent, thank you. Look,
Yeah, it's regulatorily required equipment. There has been some good ideas from some of the residents just to explore partnerships or joint buying, which I understand a lot of that has already been talked about, but we'll put faith in the procurement policy to find our best options out there. And hopefully we can get a better deal than what we've got on paper here, but yeah, let's get it set aside.
awesome, thank you. Seeing no further lights, all in favor?
Aye.
Perfect, thank you. Industrial hot water pressure washer, MSI grants,
I'll give you that motion.
$12,000.
Spend 12 grand on the MSI hot water pressure washer.
Excellent, thank you. And you like that, so you're good. Any further discussion? All in favor? Oh,
Well, I just heard, I think we were told that we'll probably get our money back fairly quickly on that, so I think it's a no-brainer.
It's a win-win.
okay. All in favor? That's carried. Garbage truck, 2006, 50% share with BB. To be determined, 200,000, deputy mayor, holiday.
Make a motion to defer this until a decision is made on the regional waste study.
Defer until the regional waste study is complete.
That's a negative motion.
No,
The defer.
defer the decision on this until we know the outcome.
Well, I said that for one of the previous ones I was told.
No, you
it's
said no to
negative.
it.
Councillor Wilkie.
Oh, boy. That's
Yeah,
what-
we're not gonna buy a truck if we're gonna regionalize everything here. Makes 100% sense here, I think, and yeah, let's see where that shakes out.
There you go, I don't think anything can be added to that conversation to make any more sense between you and Deputy Mayor Holiday, so. Rab, let's
Yeah.
see what you got.
I think I have something pretty profound,
Oh.
as per usual. If we listen to this report tonight, he said we have excess truck capacity right now in this region. So that makes me think, well, why would we buy a new truck then if we have excess capacity someplace? The report also recommends regional curbside pickup, so I'm with Deputy Mayor Howard.
I agree. All in favor?
To defer.
To defer.
Okay, I'll
Okay, the motion. All in favor of the motion?
motion.
That's
To defer.
unanimous.
Yeah.
That's good. Defer.
Me too.
Well, we may-
It's for the truck.
So, I'm gonna give you a motion for,
That's about our
Yes, if I could get a motion
So I'm gonna make a motion to administration 12.1 to postpone the discussion for our operating budget 2020
until.
Sorry, all you
until
guys ever sat
our
here for
next
3 hours.
regular council meeting.
Okay. 12.2, Regional Solid Waste Master Plan. Yeah, I think we will vote on that. Motion to postpone, all in favor? Excellent. 12.2, Regional Solid Waste Master Plan. You have, if everybody goes back and opens up your agenda, we have some recommendations. So in regards to our earlier presentation, what direction do we want to set for administration? Because we do not want to leave this hanging. We want to set some directions and get stuff moving. Mr. Sharp.
Here,
Brad, you.
sorry, it's me.
There you go, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mayor Crane. So as you saw earlier today, or tonight, presentation from the consultants regarding the possibilities and recommendations around regional solid waste partnership. Administration is asking council for direction to enter into negotiations and determining an implementation plan around regional solid waste that is non-binding for council. So taking the recommendations, getting around the table with regional partners, and discussing where the possibilities are to partner in any or all of the recommendations. And then we would come back within the next 3 months, and we'd come back to council with our recommendation to council.
January. Okay, thank you. So we have two.
I'll give you that,
Oh,
sure.
I think Waring is gonna make that option one.
Yep.
Excellent.
I don't need a microphone, everybody's gone home. Council directs administration to work with each of the participating partners' administrations to develop an agreement and implementation plan within the next 3 months that supports prioritisation and implementation of regional opportunities for solid waste management as outlined in the GHD Limited report.
Mr. Wilkie.
If, I just wanna clarify one thing that I heard in your preamble there, Mr. Sharp, it was any or all, of the proposed services. So my understanding is that this will move forward as kind of an opt-in, discussion. I wouldn't want it to proceed as we're negotiating a framework for all 3 services. I know that I have my feelings about particular services already where, you know, we come back and say, yeah, I'm not interested in blue bins. and it's sewage the whole deal. Is that a correct characterization?
I would agree. So just to be clear, we will reach different places in the months to come, as we're around the table with other municipalities, where we could reach go, no-go decision points on certain parts or certain recommendations, and then we'll have the option to do just that. But at some point in the next 3 months, once those details are finalized, administration has had a chance to scrub down the recommendations and what those implications are, financial and otherwise, we will come back to council with a full demonstration of that, and the recommendation for which parts of the regional solid waste recommendations that we suggest we should enter into.
Excellent. I think it was a good presentation. There was a few things that I think this council was very firm on that they had some issues with, and I look forward to you going through that if this motion passes and bringing back some answers on those things. So, Deputy Mayor Holiday, and then Gordon.
Yeah, I'm good with the motion, but I want to throw out the idea that I would like an expanded search, not just partners in the study, but also the City of Calgary. Just you may have had a chance to sit and talk with the VP in admin for City of Calgary in the recycling department, and his attitude was very much, why aren't we just sending a truck out there if you need recycling, right? Their cost is very similar to City of Okotoks, and if we're doing best for what's, I don't want to leave any stone unturned. If we can get, the other reason I want it looked into is Cascades is a better MRF than some of the private MRFs that are being used. So I don't want to not look into that. That was a terrible late night sentence. No, it's the partner. It's participating partners administrations is in the motion, which I'm good with, but I'd like to add as well as the City of Calgary.
We're gonna go to Todd, then we're gonna go to Gordon.
The only concern I have with Deputy Mayor Holliday's amendment or change is that now we're gonna invest significant time and resources working with the regional partners as per the solid waste strategy, and investigate significant resources in a parallel effort outside of the partnership to see if there's a better option out there. We don't have the resources to do that. So I would prefer to be able to investigate whether regionally, as part of this, we can come to some agreements before we start looking at off-ramps. That's the commitment we've made to this group as we've gone down this path and spent the money on a regional solution.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Gordon.
Yeah, the concern I still have with all of this, and with all due respect to Andre, I'm not sure he actually answered my question, because 56% is being diverted currently to the landfill. But in that study in Ontario, done in June of 2019, 30% of the blue box recycled were further diverted. So my concern in all of this is, yeah, we're gonna get in a partnership with blue box recycling, and at the end of the day, that blue box recycling is still gonna be going to the landfill. So this is where I'm still concerned that we're gonna get involved in a recycling plan when there aren't options for that recycling to be going to a place that can then use that recycling outside. I mean, we're just gonna be ending up putting it into the landfill. I'm not prepared to do that.
Go ahead, Mr. Sharp.
Councillor Gordon makes a good point, and I was a little taken aback by Andre's comment around recycling.
Same.
His recommendations in the report did not endorse recycling. They endorsed curbside organics, regional garbage collection, and there was nothing about recycling in the report at this time. Now, if you read into the report, the reasons are quite obvious, and that is the uncertainty around the recycling market. So, I don't know if your question is moot, Councillor Gordon, or not, but the recommendations in the report don't address recycling.
If I can make to that follow-up, in that report from June 2019, the Durham Regional Waste Facility, because they do a dual stream, and they got their residuals down to 7% of their blue box recycling. That's a massive difference from the rest of Ontario. So even though they may not have the markets, but because of what they've expected the residents in Durham region to do, they've got it to such a point that they find the markets for their recycles. And I'm just wondering if we can't maybe make a phone call to that center and say, how are you doing it? Before we even go down the path of looking into this regionalization, if we end up just having to fill our landfill. I'm concerned that we're putting good money after bad when we don't have a market for it.
Wilkie.
I'd say I'm fine having the discussions broadly, right? Like, I think that's what it comes down to. I mean, I have concerns about the recycling market right now, and part of that evaluation when we look at making a decision on recycling would be taking a hard look at how much we can actually divert through that process. And that was how I read the draft report, was that it's challenging right now to truly divert waste through the blue bins, so let's not do it right now. So, I mean, that was why I asked the question about, is it gonna be opt-in or not? I think we as a council have to make that decision down the road, but I'm comfortable with the discussions going on. You know, the one thing that did jump out at me out of the report is they're throwing out numbers that are, you know, well, there are concerns with the numbers, but the total numbers for garbage plus organics are numbers that are equal to what we're paying now for garbage plus drop off your own blue bin recycling, and that option included maintaining our recycling depot. So, you know, if we can sharpen our pencils and find out, like, is that truly what happens? Well, yeah, for the same cost, I'd be interested in finding out about green bin, but I don't want to limit what you're discussing with our partners, because I am interested. You know what? I would love to not have to go down to the recycle depot. That's what it comes down to for me. But it's a dollars and cents thing for me. So, you know, I'd like to see you to have the full range of discussions, but ultimately we make the decision.
Excellent, thank you. I'm gonna go down to Mr. Beaton, and then I'm gonna comment, and then we'll call over.
Sorry, just wanted to throw out a comment. There is a lot of confusion around recycle. The recycle industry is in chaos. Every municipality in North America is struggling to figure it out, trying to become more efficient, trying to find solutions. This report does not in any way indicate that we're focusing on recycle. It's more around the regionalization of garbage and improving our recycle process. So the recommendation is to find improvements, efficiencies, and regionalize the service to perhaps find better solutions for a market for our materials, and improve our dire situation with recycling. So I just wanted to throw that out. It's not something we have to buy into with recycle. It's something we want to keep in our forethoughts, but it is something as a regional initiative, we should be looking at better ways to educate our residents, streamline our facilities so we make better use of our dollars, and maybe find better or force better market values on our materials.
Thank you for that input.
Thank you.
Well, there you go. Deputy Mayor Holiday, would you still like to continue with the amendments?
The biggest thing that I care about is finding the difference between the MRFs and the options, and because I don't think you can make a real good decision on recycling if you don't understand the environment on the MRFs and the difference of where these products are being sent. I don't want to be embarrassed again by taking recycling that ends up in a landfill. I don't want to be sending it to a private MRF or a private recycle company that we have no clue where it's going and if it's actually just being landfilled. I don't want to get it. So without having the full information, and I just know that, and that's why I'm interested in Calgary's, because they are more transparent from what I understand and have better recovery rates. I want it looked into, but you're right in the fact we've got commitments to our regional partners. So I'm okay with leaving it as is, but I still want it looked into for the quality of the end result compared to, so we're not picking a second-rate option.
And you know what? I can agree with you fully, and I think in 3 months we might get some more answers. The budget's going to be passed here the 24th. we're gonna know what's going on in the industry a little more in 3 months, so we can readdress it, I think. When we get the answers from our regional partners, then we can start playing ball and really look into it. So I don't think we need to solve it tonight. But I'm totally on board. I wanna make sure that if we're doing it, we can look our kids in the face and say, we actually recycled something, and we're not lying to you. How dare you? How dare you? Councillor Rabb.
I'm gonna support the motion, and I think that needs to, or Mr. Sharp needs to follow up with the regional partners and see how it goes from there. And the Calgary option is something we can revisit down the road, depending upon what kind of negotiation Mr. Sharp and the rest of his colleagues find themselves in. Thank you.
Perfect. I think we're wrapped up.
Yeah. Just to piggyback on Councillor Holiday, like, I will have hard questions about where things are going when we go to make a decision, so just
good,
as long as we're prepared for that.
Excellent. All right, all in favor of the motion? Excellent. Because we can, if we're here, I mean, let's get the community church support, community support out of the way. Let's.
I'll just make a motion that we accept Pastor's, I can't remember his name right now. Anyway, that for information, the Pastor Hastings, Matthew Hastings.
Matthew Hastings for community support.
Yeah, community support grant, just a thank you note is all it is, just to acknowledge it. Thank you.
We acknowledge it.
Just acknowledge it.
Okay.
Received.
So accept correspondence, all in favor? And make a motion to accept Sheep River Library minutes as presented, all in favor? Excellent. No closed. We'll bring that one back, cause it's not a big deal. It's FC, never mind, it's nothing.
Do we need to postpone that?
Nothing.
Well, it'll take 2 minutes.
Who put forward the motion under yourself for the Sheep River?
Yes, for library. Okay, motion to go and close then.
I'll give you that.
So watch, this is not quick.
Hold-
We just,
Can we just hold on 1 second, Mayor Crane? We
Sure.
just need to catch up to you here. I know it's late.
Then we're going to close those
Do
down.
we have a motion to go in camera?
Yeah.
We're going to by wearing, Miss LeBlanc, Mr. Beaton, Mr. Malenka, and Miss Middleton, thank you so